Perhaps tonight everything around you appears to be saying no. The door seems closed. The answer seems final. The condition before you looks so fixed that even hope feels unreasonable. You have looked at the facts, turned them over in your mind, searched for another route, and still the same conclusion appears to stand before you. Impossible. Yet I ask you not to fight that conclusion tonight. You have fought enough for one day. As your body begins to surrender its weight to the bed, make one quiet decision before the world grows distant. Write in the comments, I am already beyond the obstacle. Do not write it as a wish, and do not write it as an argument against what you presently see. Let it be the declaration of the place you are choosing to occupy inwardly tonight. I am already beyond the obstacle. Then leave the words alone. You do not need to prove them. You do not need to explain them. Let them mark the moment when you stop asking the impossible for permission. For that is what so many people do without realizing it. They say they desire freedom, but every night they return to the obstacle and ask whether freedom is allowed. They desire an answer, but they consult the silence to determine whether the answer may come. They desire opportunity, but they ask the closed door whether another door can exist. They desire love, but they ask the last disappointment whether love may still belong to them. They desire financial ease, but they ask the present figure upon the page whether another state is permitted. And naturally the obstacle gives the answer of the obstacle. A wall knows only that it is a wall. A locked door knows only that it is presently locked. A refusal reports only the refusal. The present circumstance cannot tell you what lies beyond itself. So stop asking it. This is not the hour to wrestle with facts. It is not the hour to persuade another person inwardly. It is not the hour to discover exactly how the road will open. It is not the hour to calculate every possible means by which the situation could reverse itself. You may attend to practical matters tomorrow. If a letter must be written, write it tomorrow. If a conversation is required, have it at the proper time. If some sensible action belongs to you, take it. But tonight I ask for something different. Do not carry the workshop into the bedroom. Do not lie upon the pillow while still trying to repair the machinery of life. For a few hours, you are permitted to stop being the mechanic of circumstances. You do not have to solve this tonight. Let those words become more important than they first appear. You do not have to solve this tonight. Perhaps the mind has been working upon the same matter since morning. It has examined every possibility you already know. It has imagined what another person might say. It has imagined what might go wrong. It has prepared answers to questions no one has asked. It has rehearsed disappointment so that disappointment will not surprise you. And now the body is tired, yet the mind believes it must continue. No. Let the problem remain unsolved for the night. You are going to make a movement more important than solving it. You are going to stop standing before it. This is the distinction I want you to understand. Most people think the necessary movement is from impossible to possible. They look at the obstacle and try to convince themselves that perhaps it can be overcome. They say, maybe there is a way. Then another voice says, but I cannot see it. They answer, perhaps someone will change their mind. The old voice says, why would they? They say, perhaps circumstances will improve. The voice asks, based upon what? And soon they are exhausted because they are trying to transform impossibility into possibility while never leaving the psychological position from which the obstacle appears enormous. I ask you to make another movement entirely. Do not move from impossible to possible. Move from before the obstacle to beyond it. There is a vast difference. Imagine a wall before you. If you remain facing it, everything you think is related to the wall. How high is it? How thick is it? Can it be climbed? Can it be broken? Is there a gate? Who built it? Why was it placed here? How long will it remain? Every question keeps the wall at the center of consciousness. Even your hope is about the wall. But suppose, inwardly, you are already on the other side. Now the wall is no longer the subject. You may remember it. You may know it existed. But you are not standing before it trying to understand how to cross. You are beyond it. That is the movement. And it can occur tonight before one visible fact changes. You may be lying in the same room. The same unanswered matter may remain. The same person may still hold the same opinion. The same sum may still stand upon the page. The same practical difficulty may still exist. Yet inwardly you are no longer sleeping with your face pressed against the obstacle. You are sleeping as though it were behind you. What would that feel like? Do not rush to answer. Perhaps it would not feel triumphant. Perhaps there would be no great emotion at all. Perhaps the most noticeable difference would be what you no longer need to do. You would no longer calculate the same problem. You would no longer argue with the same person in imagination. You would no longer repeatedly ask whether the door might open. You would no longer inspect every possible route. You would no longer say, "How can this happen?" The question would already be behind you with the obstacle. That absence of questioning may be your first taste of fulfillment. You have been trained to think that the fulfilled state must be filled with excitement. Sometimes it is, but often the truest evidence that a matter is settled is that you have stopped thinking about it with strain. A man who has arrived home after a long journey does not spend the entire evening calculating the miles remaining. There are none remaining. A woman who has received the answer she was waiting for does not continue listening for the postman. The letter is already in her hand. A man whose obligation has been satisfied does not continue adding the same figures in order to discover how he will satisfy it. The calculation is finished, so ask yourself tonight, not, "How can I overcome what seems impossible?" Ask, "If it were already behind me, what would I no longer be doing?" There is your doorway. Perhaps you would no longer be afraid. Do not force courage. Simply permit fear to have less work to do. Perhaps you would no longer be checking. Then let the checking stop for the night. Perhaps you would no longer be waiting for another person to change. Then stop watching them inwardly. Perhaps you would no longer be searching for the route. Then let the road remain hidden. You do not have to see a bridge in order to occupy the far shore in imagination. This is one of the great liberties of consciousness. The senses require sequence. Imagination can experience completion. The senses say, "First this must happen, then that, then perhaps another thing, and finally you may arrive." Imagination says, "What if I am already there?" That question does not destroy practical sequence. It releases you from psychological imprisonment to it. You may still walk tomorrow. You may still take the necessary step. But you will not walk as the person who believes the road itself must create the destination. You will move as one inwardly related to arrival. This changes the quality of everything. The person standing before the wall reacts to every stone. The person inwardly beyond it can meet the same outward facts without granting them the same authority. A delay becomes a delay, not a sentence. A refusal becomes one refusal, not a prophecy. A closed door becomes one closed door, not the closing of the whole world. That is why I tell you not to ask the impossible for permission. The impossible, as you call it, is often only a conclusion built from the pieces presently visible. You see this fact, you see that fact, you see another fact. Then reason arranges them and says, "I cannot see how." And because you cannot see how, you say, "It cannot be." But "I cannot see the road," and "there is no road," are not the same statement. One is honest. The other is a verdict. Tonight, keep the honesty and release the verdict. You may say, "I do not know how." That is perfectly acceptable. Then stop. Do not add, "Therefore it cannot happen." "I do not know how" leaves the future open. And there is peace in allowing the future to remain open, while the inner end is chosen. You do not need to invent the means. In fact, your attempts to invent the means may be the very thing keeping you psychologically chained to the present arrangement. You look only for roads that begin where you stand. But life contains meetings you do not foresee, decisions you do not hear being made, changes of mind you cannot presently predict, opportunities not yet visible, and movements that may appear entirely ordinary while they are carrying you somewhere new. Why must you design all of that tonight? You cannot. And you do not need to. Let the unseen remain unseen. Your responsibility is simpler. Where will you sleep inwardly? Before the wall or beyond it? You may have spent every previous night before the wall. You lie down and immediately review the difficulty. The darkness comes. But the problem remains brightly illuminated within. You see the conversation, you see the number, you see the refusal, you see the obstacle. Again and again you place it before yourself until sleep takes you from the very state you wish to escape. Then morning comes, and you awaken psychologically in the same place. Tonight, interrupt the pattern. Do not force the obstacle to disappear. Turn away from it. In imagination, give it your back. What is beyond it? Not the method, the life. If the matter were settled, where would your attention naturally go? Perhaps to ordinary things. Perhaps you would be thinking about breakfast tomorrow. Perhaps you would be considering a visit. Perhaps you would be planning a pleasant journey. Perhaps you would simply turn upon your side and sleep without the old pressure. That is enough. Do not underestimate ordinary peace. The greatest evidence of possession is often the absence of obsession. The desired thing becomes part of life, and attention becomes free again. So tonight, you may not need an elaborate imaginal scene. Perhaps the scene is merely this. You are lying where you are lying now. But the problem is already over. Nothing else changes. The room is the same. The bed is the same. The night is the same. But you are no longer trying to solve anything. You think, thank God that is behind me. And you rest. Can you feel the difference? Do not force it. Perhaps only 1% of the strain leaves. Let that 1% leave. Perhaps the shoulders soften slightly. Let them. Perhaps there is one breath that goes farther down than the others. Let it. Perhaps the mind begins another question, and you simply do not finish the sentence. That is already a different state. You are not required to achieve some extraordinary mystical condition before sleep. The movement may be almost invisible. You stop asking. You stop pressing. You stop demanding a route. For one moment, you behave inwardly, as though the obstacle were no longer your responsibility. This is the beginning. Perhaps the mind objects, but the problem is still there. Yes, the visible problem may still be there. I have not asked you to lie about what you see. I have asked you to stop making what you see the only place from which you are allowed to live. There is a difference. You can acknowledge the wall and still sleep beyond it inwardly. You can acknowledge uncertainty and still assume completion. You can acknowledge that the means are presently unknown and still refuse to call the end impossible. This is not denial. It is a rearrangement of authority. The visible condition says, here is what exists now. Imagination answers, and here is where I choose to stand. There need be no quarrel between them. One describes, the other selects, and tonight's selection matters more than argument. You do not need to persuade the obstacle that you are beyond it. Walls do not need convincing. Closed doors do not need speeches. Circumstances do not need to applaud your assumption. The state is yours because you occupy it. No other permission is required. Perhaps this is the first night in a long time that you allow yourself to rest before receiving an explanation. You have believed that relief must be earned by evidence. First the answer, then relief. First the change, then peace. First the open door, then security. First the visible solution, then sleep. I ask you to reverse the order for tonight. Peace first, rest first. The state first. You do not have to earn sleep by solving tomorrow. You may sleep now. Tomorrow may still require action, but you do not need to carry tomorrow's action through the night. Leave it where it belongs, outside this hour. For now, there is only one movement, before the obstacle, beyond the obstacle. Feel which one contains less strain. You know the feeling of standing before it. You have practiced that sufficiently. You know the tightening, the searching, the calculation, the inward demand. Now become curious about the other position, beyond. What is it like there? Perhaps very quiet, perhaps almost empty. No argument, no explanation, no plan, only the simple knowledge that the thing you feared was final did not remain final. You do not need to know how you crossed. You are not studying the bridge. You are noticing that the wall is behind you. Let it remain behind you for a little while. If the mind turns around to inspect it, gently turn away again. No anger. Habit looks backward. Let it, then return. Beyond. Again. The obstacle is behind you. You are not fixing it. You are not discussing it. You are not demanding that it change before you rest. You have ceased asking it for permission, and perhaps tonight this is all you need to know. You do not have to solve this tonight. You do not have to persuade anyone tonight. You do not have to discover the root tonight. You do not have to change the facts tonight. You do not have to make the impossible look possible before you close your eyes. You only have to stop standing before it. Let the wall be where it is. Let the door be where it is. Let the unanswered question remain unanswered, and inwardly move beyond. Sleep may come from there. Peace may begin from there. And tomorrow, whatever the visible world presents, you may meet it as someone who has already discovered that one obstacle was never the whole of life. When something appears impossible, the mind has a peculiar tendency to become fascinated by the very thing that stands in the way. You say you want freedom, yet your attention remains upon the chain. You say you want the open road, yet you continue staring at the gate. You say you want the answer, yet you spend your inner life studying the silence. And because attention gives importance to whatever it repeatedly visits, the obstacle begins to seem larger than the desire itself. This is one of the strangest habits of consciousness. A man may know where he wishes to go, yet if a bridge is closed, he soon forgets the destination and begins thinking only about the bridge. Why is it closed? When will it reopen? Who has authority over it? Could someone be persuaded? Is there another way to force passage? After enough time, the bridge becomes the whole story. But the bridge was never the destination. It was only one possible part of the route. The obstacle is only part of the route. It is not the end. I want you to hear that without strain. The obstacle is only part of the route. It is not the end. Perhaps you have mistaken the obstruction for the conclusion, because the obstruction is what you can presently see. The senses are excellent at making what is immediately visible appear absolute. A door before your eyes is more persuasive than a road you cannot yet see. A refusal spoken aloud is louder than a future conversation that has not yet occurred. An empty place upon a page seems more real than the provision that has not yet appeared. So the mind becomes hypnotized by the visible block. It says, "This must change first." And that sentence keeps you psychologically attached to the very condition you wish to transcend. Suppose there is a position you desire, and you are told that it has already been filled. What does the ordinary mind do? It begins imagining the employer reconsidering. It imagines the person selected stepping aside. It imagines someone discovering an error. It imagines the decision being reversed. Do you see what has happened? The desired state has disappeared from attention. The mind is now working upon the obstacle. It has placed the closed position at the center of consciousness and is asking imagination to repair the present arrangement. But what if you went farther? What if, instead of imagining the present decision being undone, you entered an experience that could only belong to the life after placement? Perhaps you hear a friend say, "You seem very happy in your new work." Perhaps you feel yourself removing your coat at the end of a satisfying day. Perhaps you place a small object upon a desk that is already familiar to you. The position that appeared unavailable is no longer the subject. You are no longer trying to reopen it. You are living beyond the question of availability. That is a completely different use of imagination. Or suppose someone has said no. The word has been spoken. Perhaps it was spoken firmly. Perhaps you heard it in a conversation that left you discouraged. The old habit is to keep replaying the moment and mentally alter the person. You imagine their expressions softening. You imagine them taking back the words. You imagine the precise sentence you wish they had spoken. Again, notice where attention remains, upon the no, upon the person, upon the obstacle. You are still standing in the room where the refusal occurred. What if the refusal were no longer relevant? Where would you be then? What would you be hearing after the entire matter had taken another turn? Perhaps nothing dramatic. Perhaps you are simply speaking with someone else about how well things worked out. Perhaps you are saying, "It all came together in the end." That sentence exists after the refusal has lost its importance. You have moved beyond it. This is what I mean by refusing to make the obstacle the destination. The obstacle may be real as a present condition, but if you continue imagining only how it must change, You make it psychologically central, and whatever is central receives your emotional energy. You may call this effort positive, but if the entire imaginal act is still organized around the obstruction, you remain in relation to the obstruction. I ask you to organize imagination around fulfillment instead. The difference is subtle. Suppose a home you desire appears unavailable. Perhaps the agent tells you another arrangement has been made. Perhaps the house has already been promised. Perhaps there is some legal or financial difficulty. The ordinary mind says, how can this specific difficulty be removed? Then it begins inventing a chain. The present occupant leaves. The agreement is cancelled. The agent changes his mind. A payment is adjusted. A circumstance shifts. You are attempting to become the architect of the bridge, but the bridge may not resemble any of these things. You do not know. And because you do not know, imagination becomes unnecessarily burdened when you ask it to solve the mechanics. Instead, go into the home, not physically, inwardly. Go beyond the discussion, beyond the availability, beyond the papers, beyond the negotiation. Imagine an ordinary morning there. You are already familiar with the place. You know which window receives the first light. You know where you left your shoes. You know the sound of the door closing. You are no longer excited because the home has become part of your life. That ordinary familiarity is powerful. The obstacle is not being altered. It has disappeared from significance. The fulfilled state has swallowed it. This is what I want you to begin understanding tonight. Fulfillment does not always require you to watch the obstacle collapse. Sometimes the most complete disappearance of an obstacle is that you no longer think about it at all. A man who has safely crossed a river does not spend the evening staring back at the current, trying to understand which drop of water might have prevented him. He is across. That is enough. The consciousness of arrival is not obsessed with the difficulty of crossing. Now consider money. Perhaps you need a certain sum. The figure seems beyond present means. Immediately the mind begins choosing a source. This person could help me. This business could produce it. This payment could arrive. This property could be sold. This opportunity could appear. You may call this imagining abundance, but often you are still imagining means because you do not yet feel the end. And then, if the chosen source does not move, anxiety increases. You have made one channel the condition of fulfillment. You say, it must come through this. Then if that door remains closed, the entire desire again appears impossible. I tell you, the state of being provided for is larger than any one source. Feel the matter completed. Imagine what you would do after the pressure had passed. Would you continue mentally chasing the same sum? No. Would you keep calculating who might give it to you? No. Would you still be trying to force one particular means? No. Then stop doing that inwardly for a little while. Imagine the freedom after provision. Perhaps the papers are no longer spread before you. Perhaps you are having supper, and the subject is not upon your mind. Perhaps someone asks about the matter, and you say, it was taken care of. Then you move on to another subject. Notice the movement. You move on. That is what fulfillment does. It releases attention. An unsatisfied state circles the problem. A satisfied state becomes free to think about something else. This is why an ordinary scene after fulfillment can be more powerful than a dramatic scene of obtaining. Drama often keeps desire at the center. Natural possession lets desire become part of the background of life. And that is where I want you to go. Not into the struggle, not into the negotiations, not into the machinery, into the life after. The obstacle is only part of the route. It is not the end. Let this principle become very practical. If a doctor has given a discouraging report, do not spend the entire imaginal act arguing with the report. Do not create an inner courtroom in which one voice says one thing and another voice tries to defeat it. Move toward the state you would know after the difficulty had ceased to govern your life. Perhaps you hear someone say, "You look wonderful." Perhaps you feel yourself making plans again. Perhaps the matter has receded enough that you are interested in ordinary life once more. If a journey seems impossible, do not imagine arguing with schedules and fares. Feel yourself at the destination. If an introduction seems impossible, do not imagine forcing people to arrange it. Hear the conversation that could only occur after you had already met. If a reconciliation seems impossible, do not spend the night correcting every sentence spoken in anger. Feel the ordinary ease after peace has returned. If a business opportunity appears lost, do not endlessly picture the lost opportunity being restored. Imagine yourself prosperous and usefully occupied after the problem has become irrelevant. The form may be specific. The state must be beyond the obstacle. This does not mean you must abandon what you desire. It means you stop worshipping the present form of obstruction. The mind is tempted to say, but if I do not think about the obstacle, how will it be removed? That question reveals how deeply you have assumed that conscious attention must supervise every movement. Consider how much of your life already occurs without your direction. You do not know what conversations take place when you are absent. You do not know what decisions are being reconsidered. You do not know which person remembers you at an unexpected moment. You do not know what opportunity is presently hidden behind another difficulty. You do not know every road. Why then insist upon creating the route from what you presently know? You only know the visible arrangement. The bridge can contain invisible pieces. Leave room for them. This is not passive dreaming. It is disciplined refusal to reduce possibility to present knowledge. There is a difference. Passive dreaming says, I hope something happens. Assumption says, I accept the end and I refuse to make my ignorance of the bridge into proof against the end. That is much stronger. You may not know how. Very well. You may not know through whom. Very well. You may not know when one visible piece will move. Very well. You do not have to know. Your work in imagination is not to become the clerk of every future event. Your work is to accept a position of consciousness. The position is fulfilled. The rest belongs to sequence. And perhaps tonight you can feel how much strain disappears when you release the obstacle from the center. You have been trying to push it away, but pushing still requires contact. You have been trying to break it, but breaking still requires attention. You have been trying to overcome it, but overcoming still gives it importance. Now simply go beyond. If you are already beyond it, what happens to the obstacle? It becomes part of the story, not the whole story. A chapter, not the final page. A turn in the road, not the destination. Perhaps one day you will look back upon the present difficulty and realize that the thing which seemed to block you became part of the very sequence that carried you forward. You do not need to decide that tonight. Do not romanticize difficulty. An obstacle can simply be inconvenient, but it need not be sovereign. It can occupy one place in the journey without being allowed to define the journey. This is enough. Let the mind begin loosening its grip upon the particular thing that seems to stand in the way. You do not have to change it now. You do not have to make it disappear in imagination. You do not have to persuade yourself that it is smaller than it appears. Leave it exactly where it is. Then ask a different question. What would I be experiencing after this no longer mattered? Not after it had been destroyed. After it no longer mattered. Those words are important. There are things in your life that once seemed enormous and now rarely enter your thought. At the time, you believed they would always matter. They did not. Fulfillment changed their scale. Time changed their scale. Growth changed their scale. A new state gave them another place. So let this present obstacle also become capable of losing importance. What would it be like if you hardly thought about it 6 months from now? What if the thing that presently occupies your mind were only a brief memory in a larger fulfilled life? What if you one day told the story and smiled at how final it once appeared? Can you feel how different that is from trying to conquer it tonight? You are not standing before it. You are remembering it from beyond. That is the direction. And because this is a night for rest, not for battle, I ask you to let the obstacle become less vivid now. You do not need to erase the image. Let it become smaller. The door can remain closed in some distant part of the mind. The refusal can remain spoken. The paper can remain where it was left. The number can remain what it is. You are not changing those things now. You are changing your relationship to them. They are no longer the center. Your attention is moving beyond. Perhaps you are sitting after the matter has been settled. Perhaps you hear someone mention how well it worked out. Perhaps you are using what you once thought unavailable. Perhaps you have become so accustomed to the fulfilled condition that you no longer remember how impossible it once seemed. Let imagination touch that life. Do not strain to hold it. Even a brief contact is enough to teach consciousness another direction. You are not required to build an entire world tonight. You only need one experience that belongs beyond the obstacle. One sentence, one feeling, one ordinary act, one moment of relief. Suppose the issue is work. You hear, "How is the new position?" You answer, "I am very happy there." Done. Suppose the issue is a home. You feel yourself turning the key at night after an ordinary day. Done. Suppose the issue is money. You hear yourself say, "That matter is behind me now." Done. Suppose it is love. You feel the absence of the old insecurity while sitting peacefully beside someone. Done. The scene need not explain anything. Its purpose is not explanation. Its purpose is implication. What must already be true for this moment to be happening? That is the secret. If you are sitting comfortably in the home, the question of availability has already been answered. If you are speaking of the new work, the issue of being selected is already behind you. If you are saying the financial matter is settled, the missing means have already been supplied somehow. If you are at peace in love, the old fear no longer governs the state. Imagination moves to the implication. Reason may still ask for the bridge. Let reason rest tonight. It has worked from the available facts all day. You are not destroying reason. You are simply allowing consciousness to stand in a place reason cannot yet reach from present evidence. Tomorrow, reason may discover new evidence. Tonight, it does not need to. You can rest beyond the visible conclusion. The obstacle is only part of the route. It is not the end. Say this inwardly if you wish, but do not turn it into a chant. Understand it. Feel what it removes. The obstacle does not deserve the whole of your imagination. The closed door does not deserve the whole night. The refusal does not deserve your final waking thought. The missing means do not deserve the last word before sleep. Give that last word to the end, not to the method, not to the obstacle. The end. You are there. The difficulty no longer occupies the center. You are living after it. The old wall may still exist somewhere behind you, but you no longer face it. And as the mind becomes quieter, perhaps this one idea can remain. The obstacle was never the destination. You were always meant to go farther. There is another habit I want you to release tonight, because it has kept many people psychologically standing before the very door they long to pass through. When a door appears locked, the mind immediately becomes interested in the lock. It wonders who has the key. It wonders whether the key can be obtained. It imagines the clerk changing his mind, the employer reconsidering, the owner withdrawing an agreement, the friend changing an answer, the money arriving through one particular person, the timetable shifting, the obstacle weakening just enough to allow passage. And all the while, imagination is being used to study the lock. I tell you, do not repair the lock in imagination. Experience yourself on the other side of the door. This is one of the simplest and yet most liberating changes you can make. If you imagine only the obstruction being removed, you remain psychologically connected to the obstruction. You are still before it. You are still waiting for permission. You are still making the present arrangement important. But if you move into an experience that belongs after the difficulty has already ceased to matter, the whole relationship changes. The lock is no longer the subject. The life beyond the door becomes the subject. Suppose a man desires employment. He has written the necessary letters. He has spoken with those he can speak with. He has presented himself properly. Then he is told that the position he hoped for has already been filled. The natural reaction is disappointment. Then imagination begins trying to repair the situation. He pictures the employer changing his mind. He imagines the person already selected declining the position. He sees another opening being created within the same establishment. He begins constructing possibilities. But notice what he is doing. He is still unemployed in imagination. He is still waiting for an employer to make him employed. He is still standing before the decision. I would ask him to leave that office entirely. Not physically at first, in consciousness. I would ask, if you were now happily and usefully employed, What would be natural a little later? Perhaps he would return home after the first week. He removes his coat. He feels the pleasant fatigue of having been occupied during the day. Someone in the house asks, "How are you finding the work?" And he answers naturally, "I like it very much. I think I shall be happy there." That is enough. Notice what is absent. No interview. No pleading. No employer changing his mind. No rejected application. No filled position. The entire obstacle has disappeared from the scene because the scene belongs beyond it. That is what I mean when I tell you not to repair the locked door. The man does not need to know through which office he will eventually enter his desired state. Perhaps it will be the one he originally wanted. Perhaps another position will appear. Perhaps someone will remember his name. Perhaps a casual conversation will place him before an opportunity he could not have predicted. Those things belong to the bridge. His imaginal work belongs to the end. Do you see how much simpler this is? The conscious mind loves machinery. It believes that if it can understand every wheel and lever, then it can safely believe in the outcome. But imagination does not need to imitate the machinery. It needs only to occupy the state that implies the machinery has already done its work. The destination contains the successful bridge without needing to display every stone. This is why an imaginal act may be very small. You do not need to direct a long drama. You do not need to see the whole sequence of events from beginning to end. One brief experience beyond the obstacle can imply everything necessary. Imagine another case. A woman wishes to live in a certain kind of home. Perhaps she has been searching for months. Every place she sees is wrong in some important way. One is too far away. Another is beyond her present means. Another is taken before she can act. At last she finds a place that deeply appeals to her, but she is told that it is unavailable. Now the mind begins bargaining. Perhaps the present arrangement will collapse. Perhaps the agent will telephone tomorrow. Perhaps the person who has taken it will change plans. Again, she has moved into the lock. She is mentally standing beside the agent. She is waiting for reversal. What would I ask her to do? I would not ask her to imagine another person losing the home. I would not ask her to manipulate anyone. I would ask her to experience being at home. Perhaps she sees herself placing fresh flowers in a simple vase upon a table. She does not need to see the entire room clearly. She feels the stem in her fingers. She adjusts one flower. She steps back. Someone who knows her well says, "That looks lovely there." And she replies, "Yes, the whole room feels like me." That is all. The home is already hers in the scene. The question of availability is over. The papers have been signed somewhere in the implied past. The decision has already been made. The key has already been received. The obstacle has become irrelevant. She is not trying to obtain a home. She is decorating one. That difference is enormous. The seeker is still asking for entrance. The resident is deciding where to place the flowers. When you understand this, you begin to appreciate why ordinary details are so useful in imagination. They move you beyond the drama of acquisition. People often imagine only the moment when they receive the thing. They see the letter arriving. They see the door opening. They see someone saying yes. That can work certainly, because such scenes imply fulfillment. But sometimes the mind remains too aware that the whole imaginal act is about getting. So go farther. Imagine using, living, resting, returning, remembering. Let the desired condition become so natural that it no longer feels like an event. It feels like your life. If you want a home, imagine living there after the excitement has passed. If you want work, imagine being accustomed to the work. If you want companionship, imagine the ordinary ease of companionship. If you want freedom, imagine having forgotten some of the questions that once tormented you. If you want financial relief, imagine treating the former difficulty as settled business. Move past the lock. Do not polish it. Do not study its mechanism. Do not ask whether it looks less secure today than yesterday. Go through. Now suppose someone wishes to travel. The desire is sincere, but there appears to be no practical means. Perhaps the necessary money is not available. Perhaps arrangements are complicated. Perhaps the journey seems beyond reach. What does the mind do? Immediately it chooses a benefactor. This person might lend me the money. This relative could help. This business matter might produce enough. Then imagination begins trying to make that person cooperate. You picture them handing you the sum. You rehearse what they might say. You calculate whether it is reasonable. Then, if they appear unwilling, the whole journey seems impossible again. You have confused the means with the destination. Instead, unpack the bag. In imagination, arrive. Feel yourself opening a case at the destination. Remove one familiar article of clothing. Place it in a drawer. Hear the sound of the room around you. Perhaps there are unfamiliar sounds beyond the window. Perhaps you feel that slight strangeness one feels on the first evening in another place. Then hear yourself say, "It is good to be here at last." Notice the phrase, "at last." It implies a journey completed. It implies whatever means were needed. It implies tickets, arrangements, money, movement, timing. None of those things need to appear in the imaginal act. They are contained within arrival. This is one reason I tell you not to burden imagination with unnecessary details. The fulfilled state is intelligent in its implications. If you are unpacking at the destination, something brought you there. You do not need to invent it. If you are sitting at your desk in satisfying employment, something placed you there. You do not need to arrange it. If you are sleeping peacefully in the desired home, the necessary arrangements have already been made. You do not need to know through whose hand. If someone you love is telling you good news, the events necessary for that good news are implied. The end contains the bridge. Your task is to become acquainted with the end. There is something restful about this because the conscious mind can finally surrender its role as engineer. You have been trying to engineer your life all day. You have examined the visible pieces. You have tried to determine which one must move first. You have said, "If this happens, then perhaps that can happen, and then maybe I can arrive." But every link you add creates another place where fear can interfere. If this person does not help, the plan fails. If this decision does not change, the plan fails. If the money does not come from here, the plan fails. If this specific opportunity closes, the plan fails. You build a bridge so narrow that one missing board appears to destroy the whole possibility. I ask you to leave the bridge unbuilt, at least tonight. Go to the other side. Your imaginal act is not required to show you how life will arrange itself. It is required to acquaint you with another identity. Who are you on the other side? You are no longer the applicant. You are employed. You are no longer the seeker of a home. You live there. You are no longer the traveler calculating means. You have arrived. You are no longer the one awaiting reconciliation. You are at peace in the relationship you desire. You are no longer the person searching desperately for supply. You are handling ordinary life without the same pressure. This is why the imaginal scene should be selected from the state rather than from the problem. Ask, what would I naturally be doing if this were already true? Not, what event would have to change first? Those are very different questions. The first takes you to fulfillment. The second sends you back to mechanics. Let us take another example. Suppose a man desires recognition for work he has been doing for years. He feels unseen. The obvious imaginal temptation is to picture a particular person finally praising him. Perhaps a superior, perhaps a critic, perhaps someone whose approval he has secretly desired. But this may keep him psychologically dependent upon that one person. Instead, what would recognition feel like after it had become natural? Perhaps he sits with a friend who says, "You must be pleased with how well your work has been received." He answers, "Yes, though I confess I am already thinking about the next thing." Do you hear the naturalness? Recognition has become background. He is not hungry for it. He has it. The state is one of being valued, not one of begging a particular person to value him. Or imagine a woman who has felt alone for a long time. If she imagines only one particular person finally telephoning her, she may remain attached to the telephone in consciousness. She waits. She listens. She studies silence. Instead, let her imagine an ordinary evening in a life where companionship is natural. Perhaps there are 2 cups on the table. Perhaps she hears someone in another room. Perhaps she says casually, Shall we go out tomorrow? The answer comes, yes, that would be nice. Nothing dramatic, no proposal, no grand confession, no reversal of an old rejection, just companionship. The lock has vanished because the state is already occupied. The more natural the scene, the less consciousness feels that it is begging for a miracle. And this is important before sleep. You are not trying to excite yourself into belief. You are allowing yourself to become accustomed to fulfillment. Accustomed. That is a beautiful word for this work. You become accustomed inwardly to what you once called impossible. The desired home becomes familiar. The work becomes familiar. The freedom becomes familiar. The companionship becomes familiar. The journey becomes a memory. The former obstacle becomes part of an older story. You are not trying to make the door open. You are becoming familiar with life beyond it. This is how imagination ceases to be a theater of struggle and becomes a place of habitation. Do not use imagination merely to watch things happen. Use it to live somewhere psychologically. Live beyond the obstacle, even for a few moments. There may be resistance at first. The mind may say, "But how could I possibly be there when this is still true?" Let it speak. Do not answer every objection. The objection belongs to the side of the door you are leaving. You do not need to drag every argument through with you. Perhaps the mind says, "But the position truly is filled." Very well. You are not imagining the position becoming vacant. You are imagining yourself satisfactorily employed. Yet the home is unavailable. Very well. You are imagining yourself at home. There is no money for the journey. Very well. You are unpacking after arrival. Do you see how the objection becomes almost irrelevant when you refuse to debate at its level? The mind wants you to return to the lock. You keep returning to the room beyond the door. Not stubbornly, quietly. The flower goes into the vase. The coat comes off after work. The bag is opened at the destination. The friend says, "I am happy for you." You answer naturally. That is enough. Do not make imagination an argument. Make it an experience. Arguments belong to uncertainty. Experience belongs to occupancy. You do not argue that you are sitting in a chair when you can feel the chair beneath you. You simply sit. In the same way, when you enter a chosen imaginal scene, do not explain why it can happen. Feel the simple fact of being there. Perhaps the picture is faint. That does not matter. Perhaps you are more auditory than visual. Hear the words. Perhaps you feel more than you see. Feel the texture of an object, the weight of a key, the coolness of a glass upon a table, the touch of a familiar coat at the end of a workday. Perhaps all you can find is relief. Then relief is enough. The imaginal act is not judged by artistic detail. It is judged by implication. What does the scene imply? If it implies that the obstacle is already behind you, you have selected well. Do not endlessly change scenes because another sounds more impressive. Choose something natural enough to inhabit. The fulfilled state is not improved by extravagance. A small scene can carry a great implication. A woman arranging flowers in her home implies more than a long fantasy about contracts, if the feeling is natural. A man taking off his shoes after work may imply more than imagining a whole interview. A traveler closing a drawer after unpacking may imply more than watching money change hands. Go to the consequence. The cause will find its place. This is where trust begins. Not trust in one person. Not trust in one institution. Not trust in one visible road. Trust that the state can contain means beyond the means you presently know. You say, "I know the end. I do not know the bridge." And for once you allow that sentence to be peaceful. I know the end. I do not know the bridge. There is nothing wrong with that. You often know the destination of a journey without knowing every person you will pass on the road. You know you are going to another city, but you do not know which carriage will be beside yours at some station, who will enter or leave, what conversation may occur, what delay may unexpectedly prove useful. You do not need to know. You hold the destination. Let life fill in the road. Tonight, you can practice this very gently. Take the matter that has seemed most locked. Do not look for the key. Do not ask who has it. Do not imagine the lock breaking. Let the door remain closed in the old scene. Now move past it. What is ordinary on the other side? Are you speaking differently? Are you sleeping differently? Are you making plans you would not make now? Are you touching something that would belong only to fulfillment? Are you no longer asking the old question? Choose one. Perhaps the simplest thing is enough. You are lying in bed some future night, and the problem no longer occupies you. You remember it and think, that was resolved. Then you turn over and sleep. Notice how perfectly that scene suits this moment. You do not even need another room. You can use the bed you are already in. The same pillow, the same darkness, only the inner meaning changes. Tonight, the matter appears unresolved. In the imaginal scene, you are lying here after resolution. Perhaps you give one small sigh, not a sigh of frustration, a sigh that says, it is over. Then nothing more. No explanation. No bridge. No repaired lock. Only the other side. Let that become increasingly natural. If the mind wanders back to the mechanism, you can gently say, that belongs to the bridge. Then return. How will they change? That belongs to the bridge. Where will the money come from? That belongs to the bridge. Who will make the decision? That belongs to the bridge. When will the opening appear? That belongs to the bridge. What if the present arrangement remains? That belongs to the bridge. Your concern tonight is the destination. What is true there? What do you feel there? What are you no longer thinking there? What has become ordinary there? Stay with that. You may discover that the obstacle has been given far too much dignity. You have spent hours studying something that, from the fulfilled state, would barely deserve a sentence. Imagine yourself looking back from fulfillment. Would you still speak about the obstacle with the same gravity? Perhaps you would say, at the time, I could not see how it could possibly work. Then you smile. And yet it did. That smile belongs beyond the lock. You can feel it now. You do not need to know what eventually made you smile. The smile itself implies enough. Let the body begin to understand that it is not required to repair the world before sleep. There is no workshop here, no tools, no diagrams, no committee deciding which hinge must move first. The door can remain where the old state left it. You are going somewhere else. Inwardly, you are already through. Do not repair the lock. Do not polish the key. Do not stand before the door, asking whether it will recognize your desire. Experience yourself beyond it. Let fulfillment be ordinary. Let the destination become familiar. Let the bridge remain unseen. And as the night continues, allow yourself to discover how restful imagination becomes when you no longer ask it to solve the obstacle, but only to give you the quiet experience of a life in which the obstacle no longer matters. Now I want you to become very practical with me. There is a question you can ask tonight that will carry you farther than hours spent wrestling with the obstacle itself. If the obstacle were no longer relevant, what would I naturally be doing? Do not ask what you would be doing while trying to overcome it. Do not ask what argument would finally persuade someone. Do not ask what unexpected event would have to occur first. Do not ask how the present facts could possibly rearrange themselves. Go beyond all of that. If the obstacle were already behind you, what would be happening afterward? That is where I want your imagination to go. Perhaps you would be telling someone the good news. Perhaps you would be sitting quietly, feeling no need to speak about it at all. Perhaps you would be using the thing you once desired. Perhaps you would be making plans that are possible only because the old difficulty has been resolved. Perhaps the most remarkable thing is that you would no longer be thinking about the problem. Do not overlook that last possibility. Very often, the clearest evidence of fulfillment is the disappearance of preoccupation. Think of something in your life that once occupied your mind intensely, but has long since been resolved. At the time, you thought about it constantly. You examined it in the morning. You carried it through the afternoon. You brought it into conversations. You remembered it before sleep. Then something changed. And what happened after the change? Eventually, you stopped thinking about it. The problem did not merely receive an answer. It lost its position in consciousness. That is what fulfillment often feels like. Not endless celebration. Release. The mind becomes available to ordinary life again. So ask yourself tonight, what would be ordinary if this were already behind me? I want that question to become familiar. What would be ordinary if this were already behind me? Not extraordinary, ordinary, because what you truly possess eventually becomes ordinary to you. The man who has lived in his home for 10 years does not stand at the front door every morning overcome by the miracle of possessing a key. He turns the key, he enters, he puts down his coat, he thinks about dinner. The possession has become natural. The woman who is happily established in her work does not spend every hour celebrating the fact that she was hired. She becomes concerned with the work itself. She speaks with her colleagues. She returns home at the end of the day. The former question of whether she would ever find suitable employment has disappeared into the past. The fulfilled state contains this ordinary quality. And if you can find even one ordinary moment that belongs after your desire has been realized, you have found something very valuable. Suppose you desire employment, and everything presently tells you that the opportunity is gone. What would be ordinary afterward? Not the interview, not the acceptance. Go farther. Perhaps it is Wednesday evening during your third week of work. You arrive home. Someone asks, "Was it a long day?" You answer, "A little, but a good one." That simple exchange contains an entire world. You are employed. You have been employed long enough for the novelty to fade. You have had a normal day. You are speaking from possession, not anticipation. There is no obstacle in that scene because the obstacle has already become irrelevant. Or perhaps no one is there to speak with you. Then imagine placing your hat where you naturally place it after work. You sit down. You feel that satisfying sense of having completed the day. You think briefly about something that happened at work tomorrow. Notice that even the word tomorrow now contains continued employment. You are not trying to get the position. You are living from it. That is post-fulfillment evidence. It is evidence that would naturally exist only after the state had been accepted in experience. Now suppose the matter concerns a home. Instead of repeatedly imagining someone saying that the home is yours, ask, what would be ordinary if this were already behind me? Perhaps you would know where the morning light enters. Perhaps you would complain that one cupboard door does not close properly. That may sound too ordinary, but that is precisely why it can be powerful. You do not complain about the cupboard of a home you are desperately trying to obtain. You complain about the cupboard of a home in which you already live. Perhaps you place a letter upon a table that belongs to that home. Perhaps you open a window because the room is warm. Perhaps a friend visits and asks where you keep the tea, and you answer without thinking. The whole question of finding the home has vanished. You are living after the answer. Do not be afraid of simplicity. The imagination does not require spectacle. It requires implication. A very ordinary action can imply a complete transformation of circumstance. Suppose your desire concerns money. You may be tempted to imagine piles of notes, a large check, or someone placing money into your hand. But perhaps what you actually want is the end of pressure. Then ask, what would be ordinary if this were already behind me? Perhaps you would open the post without fear. Perhaps you would pay an account and place the receipt away without thinking about it for the rest of the day. Perhaps someone suggests a small outing, and your first thought is no longer, can I afford it? Perhaps you sit at supper and realize that you have gone several hours without mentally calculating the same figures. There is post-fulfillment evidence. The old pressure has lost its throne. The subject no longer dominates attention. You are not imagining money for the sake of seeing money. You are imagining the life that would naturally follow from being adequately supplied. This is a much subtler use of imagination. It takes you out of wanting and into consequence. The wanting person looks toward the desired thing. The possessing person looks away from it because life has continued. Understand this well. When you are hungry, food occupies the mind. After you have eaten, you may think of something else. When you are waiting for a train, you notice the clock. Once you are seated and the journey is underway, the clock loses some of its importance. When you are waiting for a letter, every sound at the door attracts attention. After the letter has come and the matter has been settled, the same sounds mean nothing. Fulfillment changes what receives attention. Therefore, if you wish to discover the feeling of the end, ask what would cease to attract your attention. Would you still be checking? Would you still be asking? Would you still be mentally rehearsing the same conversation? Would you still be wondering whether there is a way? Would you still be staring at the obstacle? If not, then perhaps the first imaginal act is simply to stop doing those things for a little while. Not by force, by moving beyond them. Suppose your concern is a relationship. You have been analyzing a person's words. You remember the exact tone in which something was said. You wonder why they have not written. You imagine what they are thinking. You construct one explanation, and then another. All of this belongs to the state before resolution. If harmony were already natural, what would be ordinary? Perhaps you would hear their voice without examining every word for reassurance. Perhaps you would sit together in comfortable silence. Perhaps you would speak about something trivial, the weather, a journey, a book, a meal. Do you understand the importance of triviality here? When a relationship feels secure, every conversation does not need to prove that it is secure. You are free to speak about ordinary things. So perhaps your scene is not one person declaring eternal affection. Perhaps you hear them say, "Shall we go out on Saturday?" And you answer, "Yes, that would be lovely." Simple. But the ease in the exchange implies the state you desire. There is no argument, no pleading, no uncertainty. The obstacle is behind the scene. Or perhaps the relationship you desire is not with any one particular person. Then imagine the ordinary feeling of being loved. Someone leaves a book beside your chair because they remembered you wanted to read it. Someone asks whether you slept well. Someone expects you at supper. The state of being cherished is often revealed through ordinary consideration. You need not make imagination grand to make it meaningful. In fact, grandness can sometimes keep the desire distant. If every imaginal scene feels like a tremendous ceremony, consciousness may continue treating the state as rare. I want you to make fulfillment livable. Make it something you can inhabit. What would be ordinary if this were already behind me? Return to the question. Suppose you desire a journey. Perhaps for months you have thought of fares, arrangements, documents, schedules, and practical means. The journey seems difficult. What would be ordinary afterward? Perhaps you would wake on the second morning at the destination and for a few seconds forget where you are. Then you look around and remember. Perhaps you wash your face in an unfamiliar basin. Perhaps you fold a shirt and place it in a drawer. Perhaps you look through a window and hear sounds that belong to another place. Nothing dramatic. You have arrived long enough for arrival to become normal. That is the state. You are no longer trying to get there. The route has disappeared into memory. Or suppose what appears impossible is recovery from a long period of discouragement. Perhaps the obstacle is not one external event, but an entire mood of life. You have felt burdened so long that you cannot imagine what freedom would look like. Again, do not begin by trying to feel ecstatic. Ask what would be ordinary if the burden were behind you. Would you wake and think about something other than the problem? Would you notice that you are interested in making plans again? Would you accept an invitation without immediately imagining all the reasons you should refuse? Would you find yourself laughing and only later realize that you had not laughed that freely in some time? There is your scene. You are not imagining yourself defeating discouragement. You are imagining life after discouragement has lost its central place. That is much gentler. You do not have to wrestle the old state to the ground. You simply spend a little time somewhere it no longer governs. This principle can be applied to almost anything. If the matter were settled, what would become normal? If the obstacle were behind you, what would you stop discussing? If the answer had already come, what would you be doing with the answer rather than waiting for it? If the thing were yours, how would you use it? If the freedom were yours, what burden would no longer require your attention? These questions carry you naturally beyond acquisition. And there is another important point. Do not choose a scene merely because it sounds impressive. Choose one that feels personally natural. If I tell you to imagine a friend congratulating you, but you are not someone who would naturally discuss the matter with that friend, the scene may feel theatrical. There is no virtue in using someone else's scene. Your imagination should wear your life. Perhaps you are a private person. Then fulfillment may be experienced alone. You close a drawer. You sit down. You exhale. You think, that is taken care of. That may be perfect for you. Perhaps you naturally share news with a sister, a brother, a spouse, or an old friend. Then hear their voice. Perhaps you are someone who feels reality most strongly through physical objects. Feel the key, the paper, the desk, the railway ticket already used and tucked away, the familiar handle of the door. Perhaps words move you more. Hear one sentence, I'm glad everything worked out, and answer, so am I. Then stop. You do not need to produce a long scene. You are not writing a play. You are selecting evidence, evidence after fulfillment, evidence that could naturally exist if the matter were already resolved. This is why I call your attention to the word after. After. Move psychologically after the difficulty, after the answer, after the bridge, after the first celebration, after the thing has become part of your life. There is extraordinary freedom in the word after. The anxious mind lives in before, before the answer, before the money, before the meeting, before the healing, before the journey, before the reconciliation, before the door opens. It spends its whole life at the threshold. Tonight, go after, not later in clock time, now, in consciousness. Let imagination give you a taste of the state that would naturally belong after. If you have been saying, one day I will be free, move into I remember when this used to concern me. Do you feel the difference? One day places fulfillment ahead. I remember when places the obstacle behind. The present body may be in the same bed. The same night surrounds you. Yet the psychological direction has reversed. You are remembering the problem instead of anticipating the solution. This is a profound shift. Suppose the obstacle has been with you for years. You may think, how can I possibly imagine it as past when it has been part of my life so long? Do not try to erase years. Choose one moment beyond them. One moment is enough. You do not need to imagine every intervening day. Perhaps you hear yourself say, it seems strange now that I once thought nothing would change. That sentence places years of difficulty behind you, without describing how they ended. Or you say, I am glad that period is over. Again, the entire bridge is implied. Do not worry if you cannot produce great emotion. The words may initially feel like words. Let them become a position. You are speaking from after. That is the essential thing. The feeling can deepen through familiarity. You have probably noticed that when you first enter a new home or begin new work, everything attracts your attention. After a while, it becomes normal. The same is true inwardly. At first, the fulfilled state may feel strange. You may need to deliberately enter it. But if you return gently, it can begin to lose its strangeness. That is what you want, not permanent excitement, naturalness. The state should eventually feel less like a wonderful idea and more like a place where you belong. And nighttime is excellent for this because the senses are already preparing to release their claim upon you. You do not need to solve anything while lying here. You can use these quiet moments to become familiar with what would be ordinary afterward. Perhaps imagine tomorrow evening as though the matter had already been settled before tomorrow began. What would you do differently? Would you enjoy the meal more? Would you telephone someone without the old concern in your voice? Would you read peacefully? Would you lie down tomorrow night and think, what a relief? Choose the smallest natural difference. That small difference may reveal the state more honestly than any great display. What would be ordinary if this were already behind me? Perhaps you would sleep more deeply. Then there is something beautiful here. You can begin practicing the fulfilled state through the very act you are about to perform. Sleep. If the matter was settled, perhaps you would not remain awake trying to solve it. You would permit yourself to sleep. Then sleeping peacefully is itself post-fulfillment evidence. You do not need to wait until the problem disappears before giving yourself that evidence. You can begin now. You can let the mind become less involved. You can stop rehearsing. You can stop questioning. You can lie here as the one who has nothing more to accomplish about this matter tonight. That is already closer to the state beyond the obstacle. Perhaps you say, but tomorrow the problem will still be there. Tomorrow is not here. Tonight is here. And tonight you can choose where consciousness rests. If tomorrow contains practical action, you will take it. But you need not practice tomorrow's worry in advance. There is no wisdom in suffering a circumstance before the hour requires you to meet it. Let this hour belong to the end. If the obstacle were no longer relevant, what would you naturally be doing? Perhaps exactly this: lying quietly, not searching, not arguing, not calculating, knowing that the matter has become part of the past. Let yourself experience that for a moment, not as a demand, as an experiment. Imagine that nothing needs to be solved before morning. Imagine that the question has already received its answer somewhere behind you. Imagine that the obstacle which looked enormous has become strangely unimportant. What would your body do? Perhaps it would sink slightly deeper. What would the mind do? Perhaps it would begin to wander toward ordinary things. Do not stop it. Ordinary thought can be evidence of release. If you suddenly think about breakfast, a journey, a book, a friend, or something unrelated, perhaps that is exactly what the fulfilled mind would do. Do not drag yourself back to the desire merely because you believe you must keep thinking about it. Possession does not require obsession. Let the desire become normal enough to leave the center. You have selected the state. You have touched the evidence after fulfillment. Now you are allowed to live beyond it. The matter can become background. And perhaps tonight you need only one small scene. Someone says, "I'm glad that worked out." You answer, "So am I." Or perhaps no voice at all. You simply feel the thought, "That is behind me now." Then let silence follow. Do not explain what happened. Do not describe the bridge. Do not ask when it happened. You are after. Stay after. The obstacle belonged to before. You are no longer there. What would be ordinary if this were already behind me? Let the question remain somewhere softly in the mind. Perhaps the answer is rest. Perhaps the answer is relief. Perhaps the answer is an ordinary conversation. Perhaps the answer is forgetting the problem long enough to notice life again. Whatever the answer is, let yourself experience it. Not as someone begging for a future, as someone remembering what once seemed impossible. And if the mind becomes quiet enough that even the scene disappears, allow that too. You do not need to keep the picture before you all night. The picture was only a doorway. The state is what matters. Beyond the obstacle, after the answer, inside the ordinary life that follows. Let that become more familiar now, until the thing you once called impossible begins to feel less like a wall before you and more like something that, from another state, you may one day barely remember worrying about at all. There is one more distinction I want you to carry with you tonight, because without it the mind can become frightened by every fact that appears before the senses. A fact may be true without being final. That is not a contradiction. The position may truly be filled tonight. The answer may truly be no tonight. The tickets may truly be unavailable tonight. The money may truly not be in your hand tonight. The person you love may truly appear distant tonight. The road may truly be closed tonight. I do not ask you to call any of these things false. I ask you to stop calling them complete. A fact describes a scene. It does not contain every future scene. This is where many people become trapped. They believe that if they acknowledge the present condition, they must also accept the present condition as destiny. But those are two different acts. You may acknowledge, "This is what I see," and still refuse to add, "Therefore this is all that can be." The senses report what is present. Reason arranges what is presently known. Imagination can occupy what is not yet visible. These faculties do not have to be enemies. You do not have to destroy reason in order to use imagination. You only have to understand the jurisdiction of each. Reason is very useful when the premises are known. If I know that a train leaves at a certain hour, reason helps me arrive in time. If I know that a bill is due, reason helps me make a practical arrangement. If I know that a road is blocked, reason tells me not to drive directly into the barrier. But reason can only calculate with the evidence already available. It cannot include what has not yet appeared. It cannot calculate the conversation that has not yet happened. It cannot account for the person you have not yet met. It cannot include the letter that has not yet been written. It cannot weigh the decision that someone has not yet made. It cannot consider the opportunity not yet visible. So when reason says, I do not see how, listen carefully to the sentence. It says, I do not see how. It does not say, there is no how. You add that, and that addition is often where fear disguises itself as logic. I cannot see the road becomes there is no road. I do not know the means becomes there are no means. I have not received the answer becomes the answer will never come. One person has refused becomes no one will agree. This opportunity has closed becomes my opportunity is gone. That movement from description to destiny happens so quickly that you may not notice it. Tonight, notice it. Let the fact remain a fact. Do not promote it into prophecy. Suppose a man has applied for a position and is told that someone else has already been chosen. The fact is simple. That position, in that moment, is filled. Reason may say, then I cannot occupy that exact vacancy in the way I had imagined. Very well. But where does reason acquire the authority to say, therefore I cannot be happily employed? It does not. That conclusion comes from identifying the channel with the state. The filled position is one fact. Employment is a larger state. Meaningful work is a larger state. Being valued for one's abilities is a larger state. The fact may close one form. It does not contain every form. So I would tell the man, respect the answer. Do not argue with the clerk. Do not resent the employer. Do not pretend the position is still open if you have been told otherwise. But do not make that answer the definition of your future. He can leave the office outwardly and still refuse to leave the state inwardly. He can say, this door is closed. My state is not. That is not irrational. It is precise. A closed door is a closed door. It is not a closed world. Now suppose a woman is told that the home she hoped to occupy is unavailable. That may be completely accurate. Someone else may have signed the agreement. The agent may have no authority to change it. The present facts may be very clear. What is she to do? Not deny the facts. Not imagine herself arguing more cleverly. Not spend the night insisting that the agent is wrong. She may simply say, this arrangement is what exists now. It is not the full measure of the home I can occupy. Then she returns inwardly to the state of being at home. Perhaps in the very place she desired. Perhaps in another place that gives the same or greater fulfillment. She need not decide. She only refuses to allow present unavailability to become permanent homelessness in consciousness. That distinction matters. The fact says, this particular arrangement is presently unavailable. Fear says, what I desire is unavailable to me. Those are not the same sentence. Learn to hear the difference. Or suppose you have been waiting for money to meet an obligation. You look at the amount before you, and the sum you possess is less than what is required. That is a fact. The numbers do not need to be denied. You do not help yourself by pretending that 2 is 10. Arithmetic belongs to reason. Use it. But when the figures are known, stop there. Do not add, therefore I am one for whom there is never enough. The numbers did not say that. Do not add, therefore I will always struggle. The page did not write that sentence. Do not add, therefore no provision can appear. The arithmetic does not contain tomorrow. The figure is present evidence. It is not a biography. It is not a prophecy. It is not a spiritual identity. Perhaps there is a practical action required tomorrow. Take it. Perhaps you need to make an arrangement. Make it. Perhaps you need to reduce an expense. Do so if wisdom suggests it. But do not perform practical action from the assumption that you are eternally trapped. Handle the fact. Do not become the fact. This is how imagination and reason can live together without conflict. Reason says, this is the present condition. Imagination says, and this is the state I choose beyond it. Reason attends to the visible duty. Imagination refuses to let the visible duty define the whole of being. One manages the present scene. The other selects the inner destination. There is no war between them unless you create one. Many people believe that using imagination means ignoring what is in front of them. I do not teach that. If a door is physically closed, you do not walk through the wood while telling yourself it is open. You recognize the door, but you also recognize that the door is not the whole of life. You may walk away from it without surrendering the end. This is important because you can become so anxious to believe that you begin fighting obvious facts. That creates tension. You say, I must not admit this is happening. Then the whole mind remains occupied by what it is trying not to admit. There is a gentler way. Yes, this is what appears now. Then breathe. And I do not call it final. Feel the difference. No argument, no violence, no inner shouting. You are not trying to overpower the senses. You are simply refusing to grant them prophetic authority. The senses are witnesses to the present. They are not judges of eternity. Let them testify. Let them say what they see. Then let them rest. You do not need to cross-examine them all night. Suppose someone you love is cold toward you. That behavior may be real. Perhaps they spoke harshly. Perhaps they withdrew. Perhaps there has been silence. Do not insult your own intelligence by pretending you cannot perceive it. But also do not let their present behavior write the permanent definition of the relationship. Their present behavior is evidence of their present behavior. Nothing more is contained in it, unless you add more. You may say, this is how they are acting now, and then stop. Do not add, therefore I am unwanted. Do not add, therefore harmony is impossible. Do not add, therefore this can never change. Those conclusions are not contained in the silence. The silence is silent. You are the one interpreting it. And interpretation reveals state. The rejected state interprets everything through rejection. The secure state can see the same behavior and say, this is unpleasant, but it does not define me. That one sentence contains enormous freedom. This does not define me. The circumstance may be real. It is not the whole of you. The delay may be real. It is not your identity. The shortage may be real. It is not your name. The closed road may be real. It is not your destination. This is why I tell you to distinguish present evidence from final destiny. The world of sense is always giving you snapshots. A photograph may be accurate and still fail to tell you what happened 1 minute later. Imagine looking at a photograph of a man with his hand raised. You might conclude he is waving goodbye. Perhaps he is. Or perhaps he is calling a cab. Perhaps he is signaling a friend. Perhaps the next moment changes the entire meaning. One frame cannot contain the whole sequence. Present circumstances are often like that. You see one frame. Then anxiety invents the rest of the film. You say, I know how this ends, but you do not. You know only what is present. Leave some room for what has not yet entered the frame. That room is not foolish optimism. It is intellectual humility. I do not yet know what this means in the full sequence. What a peaceful sentence that can be. The refusal may not mean the end. The delay may not mean failure. The loss of one opportunity may not mean loss of the state. The closed road may not mean the destination has vanished. You do not know yet. So do not force the present fact to become the final meaning. Let events remain unfinished when they are unfinished. The frightened mind hates unfinished things. It wants a conclusion immediately. If the answer is not visible, it chooses the worst conclusion, because even painful certainty can feel more tolerable than uncertainty. At least I know. But what do you know? Often you know only what happened today. Tomorrow has not testified. The next conversation has not occurred. The next person has not arrived. The next thought has not come. The next decision has not been made. So let today be today. Do not make it carry the whole future. This is especially important before sleep because the mind becomes suggestible in quietness. If you take one present fact and rehearse it as destiny while drifting into sleep, you give it far more emotional authority than it deserves. You say, this is happening, therefore this is my life. Night after night. Then the temporary condition begins to feel like identity. I want you to reverse that. Let the present fact remain outside the identity. This happened. Not, this is who I am. They said no. Not, I am rejected. The account is low. Not, I am poor in essence. The home is unavailable. Not, I cannot be at home. The journey cannot presently be arranged. Not, I am trapped. This separation is one of the most practical things you can learn. The event exists. You exist. Do not fuse them. You are awareness moving through conditions. Conditions change. You have evidence of that everywhere. Think of how many things once seemed permanent because they had been present for years. Then one day they were gone. A job ended. A new one began. A friendship changed. A neighborhood changed. A habit disappeared. A financial condition improved or worsened. A person who seemed central to life became distant. Someone unknown became important. The world is continually demonstrating movement, yet when you are inside one unwanted condition, you suddenly imagine that this one alone has acquired eternity. Why should it? Because it feels intense? Intensity is not permanence. Because it has lasted? Duration is not eternity. Because you do not see the means of change? Ignorance of means is not proof of impossibility. Keep these distinctions. They make the mind spacious. And in that spaciousness, imagination can operate without the constant demand to contradict reason. You can say, I know what reason can presently tell me. Good. Then ask, what does reason not yet know? It does not know every future event. It does not know every hidden movement. It does not know what another person may decide after sleep. It does not know what conversation may occur tomorrow afternoon. It does not know what idea may come to you 3 days from now. It does not know which road may become visible only after you take the next ordinary step. So reason may honestly say, I cannot calculate the bridge. Very well. Imagination does not need the bridge. Imagination can occupy the end. This is where the two faculties part company peacefully. Reason says, from where I stand, I cannot see how. Imagination says, then I will stand inwardly where the how is already behind me. No quarrel. No denial. A different position. Suppose the tickets are unavailable. Reason sees the notice. Fine. Imagination does not tear down the notice. It occupies the experience after attendance has already been enjoyed. Suppose the employer says no. Reason hears the answer. Fine. Imagination does not rewrite the employer's mouth. It occupies satisfying employment. Suppose the journey looks impossible. Reason calculates the present funds. Fine. Imagination does not fabricate a benefactor. It unpacks at the destination. Do you see how clean this becomes? The fact remains where it belongs. The end remains where it belongs. You are not confusing levels. And because this video is carrying you towards sleep, I want you to use this distinction tonight in the simplest way possible. Choose the fact that troubles you. Do not argue with it. State it plainly to yourself if you must. This is what is present. Then add only this. This is not the final scene. No more. You do not need to know the next scene. This is not the final scene. Feel how gently that opens the future. The mind may say, but what will the final scene be? You already know the state you desire. Go there, not through a full explanation, through one small experience after fulfillment. Someone congratulates you. You rest in the new home. You return from satisfying work. You handle the formerly difficult matter with ease. You hear yourself say, that worked out. Then stop. The present fact has not been denied. It has been surpassed in consciousness. This is what imagination is for. Not to tell lies about the present. To refuse to let the present exhaust possibility. There is a great difference between fantasy and assumption. Fantasy runs away from fact because fact is frightening. Assumption sees the fact and still chooses another inner position. One is avoidance, the other is sovereignty. You do not have to be afraid of what is true tonight. If it is true, let it be true tonight. You are larger than tonight. The condition is one arrangement. Your consciousness is not imprisoned within that arrangement forever. Perhaps tomorrow the facts remain the same. Do not be discouraged. A new assumption is not an order barked at the world, demanding immediate obedience. It is a new premise, and a premise requires time to gather its corresponding experience. You do not plant a seed at midnight and accuse it of failure at dawn, because the field looks unchanged. The visible surface may remain quiet, while something new has already been accepted beneath it. You do not need to force this metaphor into a promise. Simply understand patience. The first evidence of a new premise may appear in you before it appears around you. You react differently. You see a possibility you previously ignored. You stop sending fear into every conversation. You take one practical step without desperation. You no longer interpret every delay as rejection. These may appear small. They are not small if they belong to another state. Then reason itself begins receiving new evidence. This is beautiful. Reason, which once said, nothing ever changes, may one day say, interesting, that changed. Then something else changes. Reason expands. It was never your enemy. It simply needed more evidence. But imagination was willing to occupy the state before the new evidence existed. That is the order. Do not require reason to approve the end before you enter it. Let experience eventually educate reason. Tonight, reason may sleep. It has counted enough. It has examined enough. It has compared enough. It has done good work. Thank it. Then let it rest. You are not asking it to solve what it cannot presently solve. You are allowing imagination to occupy the place beyond calculation. The facts have spoken. You have heard them. There is no need to make them repeat themselves through the night. The account has spoken. The refusal has spoken. The silence has spoken. The closed door has spoken. The unavailability has spoken. Enough. They have described the scene. They have not spoken the final word. Let that final word belong somewhere deeper. Perhaps the word is resolved. Perhaps free. Perhaps accepted. Perhaps home. Perhaps provided. Perhaps simply not final. Let that be enough. The fact is present, not final. The road is closed, not final. The answer is no. Not final. The means are unseen, not final. The relationship is cold, not final. The scene has not changed, not final. You do not need to force a better scene into visibility before sleep. You need only refuse to confuse this scene with the whole play. There are pages not yet turned. There are rooms not yet entered. There are conversations not yet spoken. There are roads not yet seen. And you are allowed to sleep without knowing what they are. Let the facts remain true where they are true. Let the future remain open where it is open. And let imagination rest tonight in the state that says, without argument and without strain, this may be the scene before me now, but it is not the final scene. There is a moment in every assumption when the mind becomes uncomfortable with peace. You accept the end for a few seconds. You feel the matter resolved. You experience, however faintly, the relief of being beyond the obstacle. And then, almost immediately, another voice rises within you. But how could that happen? There is the old habit again. How could that possibly happen? Who would make it happen? Where would the money come from? Why would that person change? What road could open when every road I know appears closed? And in asking how, you often leave the end and return to the problem. This is one of the most subtle movements of the mind. You think you are merely asking an innocent question, but often the question how is not seeking understanding. It is demanding proof before permission. The mind says, I will allow myself to feel the end if you first show me a reasonable bridge. And so you stand again before the obstacle. You have gone from the far shore back to the river. You have returned from the destination to the road. You have taken the fulfilled state and brought it before the present facts for examination. Tonight, I want you to recognize this movement and refuse to follow it. Not with force, not by fighting thought, simply by understanding that you are not required to answer every question the mind asks. Some questions belong to the old state. How? Very often, that is one of them. If the matter were already resolved, would you still be asking how it could be resolved? No. The question would be over. If the journey had already been completed, would you still be studying how you might possibly arrive? No. You would be there. If the money had already been supplied, would you still be lying awake wondering from which source it could come? No. The source would already belong to the past. If harmony had already been restored, would you still be constructing explanations for why another person might change? No. You would be experiencing harmony. So each time you become fascinated by the question how, ask yourself gently, does this question belong to the state I have chosen, or to the state I am leaving? That alone can restore you. Perhaps the mind says, but surely I must know something about the way. In practical life, yes. When a step becomes visible, take it. When a letter must be written, write it. When a conversation is appropriate, have it. When an opportunity appears, recognize it. I am not telling you to refuse ordinary action. I am telling you that ordinary action does not require you to design the entire bridge before the first step appears. There is a profound difference. You may travel across a bridge you did not build. You may take a road you did not construct. You may enter a house without knowing which workman fitted every beam. You may receive a letter without knowing the movements of every hand that carried it from sender to recipient. Your life already depends upon countless processes you do not supervise. Why then do you imagine that fulfillment alone must be personally engineered in every detail? You have made yourself responsible for too much. That is part of your exhaustion. You say, if this desire is to become real, I must understand every piece. No. You need to understand the state you wish to occupy. That is enough for imagination. The bridge belongs to sequence. The end belongs to consciousness. Let each remain where it belongs. Suppose you desire a certain sum of money. You accept inwardly that the matter is settled. For a moment, you feel relief. Then the mind says, but where could it come from? Immediately you begin listing possibilities. Perhaps from a relative, perhaps from business, perhaps from a sale, perhaps from an unexpected payment, perhaps from someone who owes you. You begin calculating. And the moment one source seems unlikely, anxiety returns. You say, then perhaps it cannot happen. Do you see what you have done? You reduced fulfillment to the channels already visible. You made the unknown illegal. You said, if I cannot name the means, there are no means. But how many important things in your life arrived through means you could not have predicted? How many people became important to you before you even knew their names? How many conversations changed your direction, though you did not wake that morning expecting them? How many opportunities appeared only because something else failed? How many roads became visible only after you had already taken another step? Life has never required you to see the whole sequence in advance. You require that only when you are afraid. Fear wants a map before it will move. Faith can accept a direction while the road remains partly hidden. So if the mind asks, where will the money come from? You may answer very softly, I do not know. And stop there. Notice how unusual that feels. I do not know. No panic, no shame, no conclusion of impossibility. Simply, I do not know. Then return to the end. The matter is settled. You do not know how. Both can exist together. That is freedom. Or perhaps the desire concerns another person. You feel for a moment that harmony is restored. Then the mind says, but why would they change? Again, you have returned to the mechanism. You are trying to enter their mind. You are trying to manufacture their decision. You are trying to make their present personality explain your desired end. Leave them alone. You do not need to know what conversation they may have tomorrow. You do not know what they may remember in the night. You do not know what softens a human heart. You do not know what circumstance may reveal something to them. And you do not need to know. Your imaginal responsibility is not to control the machinery of another person. It is to occupy the state in which the desired harmony is already natural to you. Perhaps you hear their voice speaking kindly. Perhaps you feel the absence of tension. Perhaps you imagine an ordinary conversation after peace has returned. Then stop. Do not ask what changed them. From the end, that question may no longer matter. The mind loves causes because causes make it feel secure. But the cause you presently imagine may not be the cause that appears. And if you become attached to one imagined cause, you may reject the very bridge that could carry you, because it does not resemble your plan. You say, it must happen this way. Then life moves another way, and you become afraid. Do not make a prison out of the route. Hold the end more firmly than the method. Suppose you want to travel. You have accepted yourself at the destination. You feel yourself walking through a familiar street there. Then the question comes, but how could I afford the journey? You have left the destination. You are back at the desk. You are calculating fares. You are counting what is missing. You are standing before the obstacle again. Return. You are already there in imagination. Perhaps you are opening a window in the place where you are staying. Perhaps you are unpacking. Perhaps you are saying to someone, the journey went more smoothly than I expected. That sentence contains the bridge without describing it. Do you see? The journey went more smoothly than I expected. You are not saying how. You are speaking after. There is great intelligence in that. Imagination does not always need to show you the mechanism. It can imply successful mechanism by showing you the consequence. This is one reason the end is so peaceful. The end contains answers you no longer need to ask. From before fulfillment, the mind has 100 questions. From after fulfillment, many of them disappear. How did it happen? It happened. Who helped? Someone did. Or perhaps no one in the way you expected. Why did the door open? It opened. Which exact moment changed everything? Perhaps you will never know. And you may discover that you do not care. The fulfilled state is not obsessed with the genealogy of fulfillment. It is living. That is why I want you to become comfortable tonight with not knowing. Not knowing is not emptiness. It is space. And space is necessary for a bridge you have not designed. If you fill every inch of possibility with your own plan, where can the unforeseen enter? You say, this person must help me. This event must happen. This date must be important. This road must open. This answer must change. Now you are not assuming the end. You are negotiating the means. Release them. Let the future contain something you have not thought of. Let there be a road outside your present map. Let there be an answer outside your present reasoning. Let there be a person you have not considered. Let there be a sequence of ordinary events that, when seen separately, seem to mean very little, yet together carry you beyond the obstacle. You are not required to foresee them. You are required only not to forbid them by insisting that your present knowledge is complete. This is humility before possibility. I know the state I desire. I do not know every way by which it may appear. There is wisdom in that sentence. You may even find that what you call how is often fear wearing the clothes of intelligence. Fear says, be sensible, explain it. But what it really means is, return to what you already know. And what you already know is exactly the arrangement from which the problem appears impossible. Of course, the old arrangement cannot explain the new one. If it could, the new state would already be visible. A new end may require facts not yet present. So stop demanding that the present explain the future. Let the present remain incomplete. You may know enough for this moment. Not enough for next month. Not enough for the whole bridge. Enough for this moment. And tonight, this moment asks very little of you. Rest. Choose the state. Leave the road alone. Perhaps tomorrow you will wake with one clear idea. That is enough for tomorrow. Perhaps a person will speak to you. That is enough for that moment. Perhaps nothing visible will happen tomorrow. Then nothing visible needs to happen tomorrow for you to remain inwardly directed. Do not set a timetable for the bridge. That is another form of asking how. How long? It is the same anxiety wearing a clock. How long will this take? How many nights must I do this? When will I know it is working? Notice what these questions imply. They imply that you are still measuring distance from the destination. But if you are living from the end, distance is not your concern in imagination. You may acknowledge time in practical life, while refusing to make time the ruler of your state. Tonight, do not count days. Do not measure progress. Do not compare this night with the last. The mind likes to turn spiritual practice into a ledger. I imagined correctly 3 nights. I doubted twice today. I felt relief for 10 minutes. Perhaps I ruined it. Stop accounting. You are not being paid by the minute for belief. The state is not earned by perfect performance. You are learning to return. That is enough. And each time the question how arises, you can treat it as a bell reminding you that you have wandered back toward the bridge. No anger, no frustration. Simply notice. How? I am standing before the road again. Return to arrival. But who? I am arranging people again. Return to the state. But when? I am measuring distance again. Return to the end. But why would they? I am trying to control another mind again. Return to harmony. But where will it come from? I am choosing a channel again. Return to provision. This can become very simple. The question appears. You do not answer. You move from mechanism to fulfillment, from road to destination, from bridge to far shore. That is the practice. Perhaps you worry that refusing to answer how is irresponsible. It is only irresponsible if a practical decision requires information and you refuse to seek it. That is not what I mean. If you are traveling tomorrow and need to know the train time, discover the train time. If a contract requires reading, read it. If your affairs require practical attention, attend to them. But do not confuse practical information with existential certainty. You may know the train time without knowing who you will meet on the train. You may know the terms of a contract without knowing what opportunity it may later create. You may take the sensible step without knowing the whole story. Practical intelligence operates locally. Anxiety tries to control everything. Release the everything. Deal with what is yours to deal with. Let the rest remain unwritten. There is great peace in accepting that you are not required to be omniscient. You are not required to know every event before it occurs. You are not required to predict every human decision. You are not required to guarantee every outcome through visible means. You are allowed to be a person standing in one moment with limited information and still occupy inwardly a chosen state. Limited information does not mean limited consciousness. The senses may know little of tomorrow. Imagination can still know the quality of the end. That is enough. What would the end feel like? Relief, completion, naturalness, security, freedom. Let those be known. How they are clothed in events can remain unknown. Tonight, let the unknown stop frightening you. You have been taught to think of the unknown as a place where danger hides, but possibility hides there too. Every good thing not yet visible is presently unknown. Every unexpected friendship was once unknown. Every opportunity you did not plan was unknown before it arrived. Every solution that surprised you belonged to the unknown one moment before it became fact. So why should the unknown mean only trouble? Let it become neutral again. Unseen does not mean absent. Unexplained does not mean impossible. Unplanned does not mean unavailable. Unknown does not mean against you. These distinctions can quiet the mind. Perhaps the next chapter is unknown. Let it be unknown. You do not need to read it tonight. You already know the feeling you wish that chapter to contain. That is enough. Imagine closing a book after reading the final page of a happy resolution, even though the middle pages are missing. You know where the story ends. Would you need to invent every missing sentence before sleep? No. You would know the conclusion. Let imagination hold the conclusion. Let life write the middle. There is a great temptation to reopen the book and fill the missing pages yourself. Resist that temptation gently. The bridge may be more elegant than your plan. It may be simpler. It may involve fewer people. It may involve more people. It may pass through something that initially looks unrelated. You do not know. Leave some mystery. Mystery is not the enemy of faith. Sometimes it is the room in which faith breathes. And because night is already moving you toward a state where conscious control weakens, this is a perfect time to stop demanding explanations. You are going to sleep. You cannot supervise the world while sleeping. You cannot watch every road. You cannot monitor every person. You cannot keep every possibility under observation. And yet life continues while you sleep. People move. Thoughts occur. Decisions form. Morning comes. You already entrust yourself every night to processes you do not manage. Extend that trust to the bridge. You have selected the end. You do not need to remain awake designing the route. Let the mind say once more, if it wishes, but how? And this time do not answer. Let the question fall into silence. How? Silence. Who? Silence. When? Silence. Through what means? Silence. Not because there is no answer. Because the answer is not required tonight. Feel the relief of that. The question can exist without being solved. You can be safe without knowing. You can rest without knowing. You can assume without knowing. You can sleep without knowing. And perhaps the deepest freedom comes when you discover that the unknown does not need to be translated into impossibility. You do not know how. Very well. You know where you choose to stand, beyond the obstacle. after the answer, inside the fulfilled state. Let that be enough. The road can remain dark tonight. You do not need to illuminate every mile. A traveler needs only enough light for the step he is taking. And you are not even required to take that step now. Now you may rest. The bridge can wait. The road can wait. The explanation can wait. You have accepted the destination. Let the unknown remain unknown. And let sleep come without asking it to reveal the way. There are moments in life when the event that changes everything does not look important while it is happening. A man chooses one street rather than another because the weather has changed. A woman delays leaving home by 10 minutes because she cannot find a glove. A letter arrives on an ordinary morning and is almost placed beneath several others before it is opened. A friend mentions a name casually at supper. Someone misses one train and takes the next. A meeting is postponed. An invitation is declined. A door closes. And at the time, none of these things appears to contain a destination. They appear to be interruptions, inconveniences, accidents, small decisions. Yet later, when you look backward from a new condition of life, you may see that these apparently unrelated moments formed a road you could never have designed in advance. This is why I tell you not to become too concerned with the bridge. You may know the end without knowing the sequence that carries you there. And very often, the sequence will look like ordinary life while you are moving through it. That is the mystery. The bridge does not necessarily announce itself. There may be no voice saying, "This event is important. Pay attention." This is the beginning of your answer. Life rarely labels its moments so conveniently. What appears insignificant today may become essential when seen from tomorrow. What appears disappointing may redirect you. What appears delayed may place you somewhere at another hour. What appears like the loss of one opportunity may release you for another. I do not say that every inconvenience is secretly a blessing. Do not force meanings upon events merely because you wish to feel spiritual. Sometimes a delay is simply a delay. Sometimes a refusal is simply a refusal. Sometimes a train is simply late. But you do not know the whole sequence while standing in the middle of it. That is the point. You do not know enough to pronounce every event for or against your desired end. So allow the middle to remain unfinished. If you have accepted a state inwardly, you do not need to turn every incident into evidence. You may simply continue. Suppose you have assumed that you are happily employed. The next day, you write to someone and receive no answer. The old mind says, "Nothing is happening." But perhaps the unanswered letter sends you to speak with another person. That person remembers someone else. A name is mentioned. You decide to visit. The person you hope to meet is absent, but while waiting you speak with another man. 3 weeks later, you are working in a place you had never considered when you first imagined employment. Which event was the bridge? The unanswered letter? The decision to visit? The absence of the person you intended to see? The conversation while waiting? From the end, perhaps you could trace a sequence. From the beginning, you could not have planned it. And if you had insisted that the first letter must be answered in exactly the way you desired, you might have judged everything else as failure. This is what I want you to avoid. Do not make one visible route sacred. The state is sacred. The route is flexible. There is a great difference. If you make the route sacred, every deviation frightens you. This was not supposed to happen. This person was supposed to help. This door was supposed to open. This week was supposed to bring the answer. Then you begin fighting the bridge because it does not resemble your drawing of it. But what if your drawing was never the bridge? What if it was only the best plan the present mind could produce from limited information? The mind can calculate only with the pieces already visible. Life may contain pieces not yet on the table. Let there be pieces you do not know. This does not mean you must wait passively for miracles. It means you take the natural step before you, without demanding that the step explain the whole journey. If it feels reasonable to write the letter, write it. If an introduction is offered, accept it. If a journey is suggested and practical wisdom agrees, consider it. If a conversation feels natural, have it. But do not burden each action with the question, "Is this the thing that will make my desire happen?" That question turns ordinary movement into anxiety. Take the step because it belongs to the day. Let the larger sequence reveal itself later. A man who walks through a city does not need to know the name of every stone beneath his feet in order to arrive. He simply continues in the direction he has chosen. Your inward state gives direction. The events need not all look significant. Perhaps you have noticed this in your own history. Think of someone important in your life. Can you trace every event that had to occur before the two of you met? Perhaps you attended a gathering you almost refused. Perhaps another person invited you. Perhaps you were in a certain city only because some earlier plan had failed. Perhaps someone else changed their mind, and because they changed theirs, you changed yours. At the time, these events were not recognized as a carefully arranged sequence. They were simply Tuesday, Wednesday, a conversation, a decision, an inconvenience. Then later, the pattern became visible. This is how much of life moves. We understand backward what we could never have calculated forward. So why should you demand complete foresight now? You are allowed to choose an end whose road you cannot presently explain. The inability to explain the bridge does not weaken the destination. It only reveals that you are standing before information you do not yet possess. Let that be comfortable. Perhaps your desired end concerns a home. You imagine yourself already living there. Then tomorrow, you hear that the place you originally wanted is unavailable. Do not immediately say, then my imaginal act failed. Perhaps that particular place was only your conscious approximation of the state of being at home. Perhaps another place appears later. Perhaps circumstances change. Perhaps the original place does become available through a sequence no one presently expects. You do not know. Stay with the state. The mind wants to seize the first event and pronounce judgment. Resist that habit. The story is still moving. If you are in the middle of a sentence, you do not know its meaning from the first three words. Let life complete the sentence. Perhaps the next event seems even less encouraging. Very well. Do not worship encouragement either. A bridge may contain boards that look unlike the destination. If you are walking across a river, the wooden plank beneath your foot does not resemble the city on the opposite shore, yet it carries you toward it. Events do not have to resemble fulfillment in order to participate in fulfillment. This is important. People often expect the road toward prosperity to look prosperous at every point. They expect the road toward love to feel romantic at every point. They expect the road toward freedom to feel immediately free. But sometimes one condition must end. Sometimes an old arrangement reveals its insufficiency. Sometimes you discover that a place, habit, or association no longer belongs to the state you have chosen. That realization may initially feel like loss. Do not rush to call it disaster. Again, you do not know the whole sequence. I am not asking you to celebrate every painful event. I am asking you to delay judgment. There is wisdom in saying, I do not yet know what place this has. That sentence prevents panic from becoming prophecy. I do not yet know what place this has. Perhaps no important place. Perhaps a decisive one. You do not have to decide tonight. If the end has been chosen, let the middle remain fluid. Consider the strange way a delay can alter a sequence. You leave your home intending to meet someone at a certain hour. You are delayed. Normally, you would call that inconvenience. Because of the delay, you arrive after another person has entered the room. You are introduced. That person later becomes essential to some part of your life. Was the delay good? From the moment of frustration, you could not know. From later, perhaps you would say, had I arrived on time, we might never have met. Again, do not create superstition around delay. You need not assume every missed appointment is divine arrangement. The lesson is simpler. Your immediate interpretation is incomplete. Therefore, do not surrender your state to immediate interpretation. You may say, this is not what I expected, and still remain inwardly at the end. That is maturity in assumption. The immature state says, if everything does not unfold according to my plan, then the end is lost. The mature state says, I know the condition I have accepted. I do not know every incident by which it may become visible. That gives life room, and room matters. You have perhaps been living with too little room. One person must change. One source must provide. One day must bring the news. One place must become available. One conversation must occur. One exact road must open. Then you wonder why you feel tense. You have reduced an entire future to a narrow corridor. Open the corridor. Let there be more doors than you presently see. Let there be people whose names you do not yet know. Let there be decisions being made outside your hearing. Let there be useful coincidences without needing to call them miracles. Let there be ordinary events that acquire importance only later. The world is larger than the portion presently visible from your chair tonight. Rest in that. You do not need to imagine every person in the sequence. You do not need to choose who remembers your name. You do not need to arrange which letter arrives. You do not need to decide which street you walk down. You do not need to control every delay. The state you occupy will influence the way you meet the events that come. That is enough. There is also another reason not to supervise every link. When you are obsessed with the bridge, you may interfere with natural action. You feel an impulse to speak with someone, but you dismiss it because they do not appear connected to your plan. You are invited somewhere, but you refuse because you cannot see how it relates to your desire. You encounter an unexpected opportunity, but because it is not the one you imagined, you overlook it. Attachment to the planned bridge can make you blind to the actual one. The fulfilled state is more flexible. It says, I know where I belong inwardly. Let me see what today brings. Not with restless expectation, with openness. A man secure in his destination can afford to notice the road. A man terrified of losing the destination watches only his map. Sometimes the map must be folded. Look up. Life may be offering something you did not draw. This is why I prefer the end to the method. The end organizes desire around a state. The method organizes desire around a mechanism. Mechanisms are many. States are clear. If you desire to be usefully employed, the state is clear. If you desire to be at home, the state is clear. If you desire harmony, the state is clear. If you desire adequate provision, the state is clear. But how each state becomes clothed in circumstance may contain countless variables. Why should you choose all of them tonight? You would be attempting to write every line of a play while standing only in the first scene. Let the characters enter. Let the scenes unfold. Know the ending. This is not a call to become careless. It is an invitation to release unnecessary control. Perhaps you have been holding one desire so tightly that every event is being examined for relation to it. Someone telephones. Is this about my desire? A letter arrives. Is this the answer? Someone mentions a name. Is this a sign? A plan changes. Does this mean it is working? You cannot rest like this. You have turned life into an investigation. Let events be events. A telephone call may simply be a telephone call. A letter may be ordinary correspondence. A change of plan may be nothing more than that. If something becomes part of the bridge, you do not have to know immediately. You can discover its importance later. This releases the nervous habit of interpreting everything. You are not a detective tonight. You are someone who has accepted a destination. The road can remain anonymous. And perhaps this is especially important as you prepare for sleep, because sleep itself is a surrender of supervision. In a little while, you will no longer know what hour it is. You will not know what is happening in another house. You will not know what conversations are taking place elsewhere. You will not know which person is thinking of you. You will not know whether some circumstance is already shifting. And you do not need to know. The world has always contained more movement than your conscious awareness can observe. Let that fact become comforting rather than threatening. You were never required to see every movement. You were required to choose your state. The rest can remain beyond sight until sight is necessary. Perhaps tomorrow you take a different street because the usual one is crowded. Do not ask whether it is part of anything. Walk. Perhaps you meet someone. Speak naturally. Perhaps nothing occurs. Continue. Perhaps a letter is delayed. Do not sentence the desire. Continue. Perhaps something you expected fails. Attend to what is practical. Then continue. The state is not so fragile that one ordinary event must destroy it. Let the bridge contain bends. A road that bends does not cease leading somewhere because you cannot see beyond the turn. This image may help you tonight. Imagine a country road in darkness. Your lamp illuminates only a small portion ahead. You cannot see the entire road. You cannot see where it turns a mile from here. Yet you do not conclude that the road ceases where the light ends. You know only that your present vision ends there. That is all. Your current knowledge is like that lamp. Useful, real, limited. It reveals enough for the immediate step. It does not reveal the entire route. Do not confuse the end of illumination with the end of the road. There may be miles beyond what you see. And there may be a bridge you could never have planned because some of its pieces do not yet exist in your present experience. Let them come when they come. Your desire does not require your nervous anticipation. It requires a new inner relation. You are no longer the one standing before impossibility, demanding a map. You are the one who knows the destination and allows the road to reveal itself by degrees. There is peace in that. Perhaps tonight your only task is to stop tracing imaginary routes. No more deciding who must help. No more deciding who must leave. No more deciding who must change. No more deciding which event must happen before another can happen. The mind may place all those plans aside. You have carried them long enough. Instead, return to one ordinary scene beyond completion. Perhaps you are sitting with someone months from now. They say, looking back, it all happened in such an unexpected way. You smile. Yes, I could never have planned it. Feel that sentence. I could never have planned it. Notice that in the scene, you are not frightened by the fact that you could not plan it. You are grateful you did not need to. The bridge has already been crossed. Its mystery is now part of the story. Perhaps that is the attitude you can borrow tonight. Not certainty about events. Trust in direction. I do not know the sequence. Fine. I do not know who will appear. Fine. I do not know which ordinary day will contain the important turn. Fine. I do not know what will look insignificant until later. Fine. You know the state. That is enough. Let the bridge be built from incidents too ordinary to frighten you. A conversation, a letter, a delay, a meeting, a refusal, a second attempt, a changed plan, a name remembered, a different street, a decision made when you are not present. You do not have to arrange them, and you do not have to call them magical when they occur. They may feel entirely natural. That is often how fulfillment enters. Natural enough that only afterward do you see the pattern. So if tomorrow looks ordinary, do not be disappointed. Ordinary days can carry extraordinary consequences. If nothing appears to move, do not assume nothing is forming. You do not see every room in which decisions are made. If something seems to move in the wrong direction, do not rush to define it. You are still inside the sequence. Let the story breathe. The end you have accepted can remain steady, while the middle changes shape. And tonight, you can sleep without supervising that middle. You do not need to keep watch over the bridge. You do not need to count the planks. You do not need to illuminate the entire road. Let the next part remain beyond the bend. You will see it when you arrive there. For now, there is only the state you have chosen. And perhaps somewhere in the quiet movement of ordinary life, a bridge you could never have planned is already waiting to become visible, one simple step at a time. One of the great mistakes the mind makes is to take one closed road and turn it into a closed world. One refusal becomes, nobody will accept me. One failed attempt becomes, this cannot happen. One difficult conversation becomes, nothing between us will ever change. One employer says no, and suddenly it seems as though useful work itself has rejected you. One house becomes unavailable, and you begin to feel there is no place where you can belong. One person withdraws, and you conclude that love has withdrawn from life. Do you see what has happened? The event was specific. The conclusion became universal. The obstacle occupied one place. The mind enlarged it until it seemed to occupy everything. This is psychological finality. And tonight, I want you to stop granting one event that kind of authority. One closed road is one closed road. Nothing more. One unavailable room is one unavailable room. One employer is one employer. One conversation is one conversation. One refusal is one refusal. Do not allow the particular to become the definition of the whole. A road can end without the destination disappearing. A person can say no without life saying no. An arrangement can fail without fulfillment failing. A method can prove useless without the state becoming impossible. This distinction will save you from much unnecessary suffering. Suppose you are traveling toward a town you have never visited before. You follow a road and come upon a barrier. The road is closed. Would you immediately conclude that the town has ceased to exist? Would you say, because I cannot continue along this road, there can be no destination? Of course not. You would understand that your knowledge of the route has been interrupted. Perhaps there is another road. Perhaps you must turn back briefly. Perhaps someone will direct you. Perhaps you will arrive later than expected. The obstacle belongs to the road, not to the existence of the town. Yet inwardly people do the opposite every day. They confuse the route with the destination. They say, if this person does not love me, I cannot know love. If this business does not succeed, I cannot know prosperity. If this employer does not choose me, I cannot know meaningful work. If this particular house is not mine, I cannot feel at home. If this one plan cannot happen, freedom is impossible. You have made one channel larger than the state, and when the channel closes, consciousness collapses. I want you to reverse that. Make the state larger than the channel. Love is larger than one conversation. Security is larger than one account. Prosperity is larger than one opportunity. Belonging is larger than one address. Freedom is larger than one road. Recognition is larger than one person's opinion. The state contains more possibilities than the conscious mind can presently name. This is why fixation creates pain. When you fix your entire inner life upon one means, every movement of that means becomes enormous. If the person writes, you are hopeful. If the person remains silent, you collapse. If the employer calls, the world is opening. If no call comes, everything appears finished. If the agent shows interest, you believe again. If they say the property is unavailable, your future contracts. You have tied your state to a rope held by someone else. Every movement of their hand moves you. That is not freedom. The state must be yours before the channel agrees. Then the channel can move without owning you. Perhaps the specific desire still remains. I am not asking you to become indifferent to everything you love. I am asking you to stop confusing desire with dependency upon one visible mechanism. You can deeply prefer one outcome and still understand that your inner state is larger than your present concept of how it must occur. This gives desire room to breathe, and it gives you room to rest. Suppose a young man hopes to enter a certain profession. He applies to one establishment and is refused. Immediately he says, perhaps I am not suited to this kind of work. Why? One establishment has spoken. Not the profession, not every future employer, not every circumstance. Yet the mind has transformed one voice into a chorus. This happens because rejection hurts, and pain seeks explanation. The easiest explanation is often the most absolute. I was refused because this cannot happen for me. That explanation feels terrible, but strangely, it also feels certain. The mind often prefers a painful certainty to an open future. At least the case appears closed. But why close it? The future has not testified. Only one event has. Let one event remain one event. This employer did not choose me. That is very different from, I am not chosen. Hear the difference. The first describes an event. The second creates an identity. And once identity is involved, you begin carrying the refusal everywhere. You meet another employer as the rejected one. You write another letter as the rejected one. You speak with less confidence because the rejected one expects another refusal. Then the old conclusion begins influencing the next scene. That is why I ask you to preserve the state instead. This employer did not choose me, but I remain one who is usefully and properly placed. Now the refusal stays where it belongs, behind you. It does not become your name. Or suppose you have been seeking a home. You find one that seems ideal. You already imagine where the furniture might go. Then you are told that someone else has taken it. The mind says, I knew it. Nothing suitable ever becomes available for me. Nothing suitable. One place became unavailable. That is all. Do not turn one address into the geography of your entire future. Perhaps another place exists one street away. Perhaps something becomes available next week. Perhaps circumstances surrounding the original place change. Perhaps your conception of what you need changes, and you discover something better suited to you. You do not know. And because you do not know, do not write the darkest conclusion into the blank space. Leave the blank space blank. That is a form of faith, not filling every unknown with fear. You may simply say, "This place is unavailable." Then return to the state of being at home. Feel yourself already established somewhere. Perhaps you do not even decide where. Feel the key in your hand. Feel the ordinary security of having your own place. Let the state remain intact. The lost channel does not need to destroy the state. This is how you become psychologically mobile. A rigid mind says, "It must be this road." A free mind says, "I know where I belong." There is strength in that difference. Consider relationships. This is where people often give one channel absolute power. One person becomes the whole meaning of love. Their silence becomes proof of loneliness. Their hesitation becomes proof of unworthiness. Their decision becomes a decree about the future. Do not do this to yourself. Another person is important, perhaps deeply important, but no individual has the authority to define the total state of your being unless you give it to them inwardly. One person's present behavior is one person's present behavior. Do not add eternity. Perhaps you still desire harmony with that specific person. Very well. Imagine harmony, but do not stand inwardly before their present behavior saying, "Until you change, I cannot be loved." That is bondage. Let love become the state first. Let belonging become yours. Let worth become yours. Then imagine the relationship from that state. You will notice that the whole imaginal act changes. You no longer plead. You no longer watch. You no longer attempt to force their mind. You simply experience what harmony would feel like. And if the bridge comes through that person, fine. If life reveals something you could not presently imagine, you are not inwardly destroyed by the difference. You have remained loyal to the state. That is the greater freedom. The mind objects. But what if I want that specific thing? Want it. There is nothing wrong with specificity. But do not make specificity into imprisonment. You can say, "This is what I desire," without saying, "And if it does not happen exactly through this route, my state is impossible." Do you see how the second sentence introduces fear? The first is desire. The second is dependence. Keep desire. Release dependence upon mechanism. Then even specificity becomes lighter. You can imagine from the end without anxiously guarding every step. Suppose you wish to take a certain journey. The ship you intended to take is full. One sailing is unavailable. What does the mind say? There is no way to go. No, there is no way to go on that particular sailing under the present arrangement. That is a very different statement. The destination still exists. Another sailing may appear. A place may become available. Another route may emerge. You do not need to invent it now. But one full ship is not a closed ocean. Remember that. One full ship is not a closed ocean. The image is useful because it shows how absurd psychological finality can become. The mind sees one obstacle and gives it universal jurisdiction. One gate is locked, therefore the whole country is forbidden. One seat is occupied, therefore there is no journey. One conversation is difficult, therefore there is no love. One account is strained, therefore there is no supply. One mistake was made, therefore there is no future. This enlargement is the illusion. Bring the obstacle back down to size. Make it specific again. Name it accurately. This one road is closed. This one answer was no. This one attempt failed. This one person is not cooperating. This one plan has changed. This one opportunity has passed. Can you feel how much less oppressive accuracy becomes? Fear speaks in absolutes. Always. Never. Everything. Nothing. No one. Everyone. Be suspicious when fear begins speaking that language. One disappointment becomes, "It always happens." One silence becomes, "Nobody cares." One delay becomes, "Nothing is moving." Fear takes a single point and stretches it across the whole horizon. You do not need to fight fear. Correct its scale. One thing happened. That is all. Then return to the state. This is one of the great practical disciplines of assumption. Do not let the outer event choose the size of your inner world. If one thing closes, let one thing close. Do not close the rest yourself. You may not realize how often you are the one completing the prison. The outer world closes one door. Then you close 10 more in imagination. You say, this failed, so that will fail too. If they refused, others will refuse. If this opportunity is gone, nothing like it will come again. The circumstance closed one door. Fear closed the corridor. Stop helping the obstacle. Leave the corridor open. There may be doors you cannot yet see. This does not require optimism in the ordinary sense. You do not have to convince yourself that everything will be wonderful tomorrow morning. You only need to stop declaring that one event contains the whole future. That is enough. The future is larger than the evidence you possess tonight. Let it remain larger. There is something deeply restful about not having to turn each event into a final meaning. Imagine how much strain would leave your mind if you could say, I do not know what this means yet. The letter has not come. I do not know what this means yet. The person said no. I do not know what this means yet. The meeting was cancelled. I do not know what this means yet. The plan changed. I do not know what this means yet. You are not denying what happened. You are refusing premature finality. This gives the bridge room to continue. It also prevents the old state from immediately reclaiming you. For perhaps you have noticed how quickly one event can pull you back. You spend an evening feeling secure. The next day something small contradicts you. Immediately you say, I knew it was not real. Why? Because one event occurred. You have made the new state too fragile. Let it become larger than one morning. If you assume that you are properly placed, one refusal does not have to destroy placement. If you assume that you are loved, one cold moment does not have to destroy love. If you assume that you are supported, one expense does not have to destroy support. If you assume that you are free, one complication does not have to rebuild the prison. States must be allowed to contain weather. A warm climate can still have a cold day. One cold day does not change the climate. Think of your chosen state that way. There may be passing contradictions. Do not make each one a climate. Let it be weather. It passes. The state remains. This is how you stop allowing one channel to dominate consciousness. A channel is simply one way through which a state may become visible. There can be many. If you desire recognition, it may come through people you expected. It may come through people you never considered. It may come later than your conscious plan. It may appear in a form that gives you more than the original desire. You do not know. But the state of being valued is larger than one critic's praise. If you desire prosperity, one business venture is one venture. It may succeed. It may fail. Prosperity is still larger. If you desire friendship, one invitation is one invitation. It may come. It may not. Belonging is larger. If you desire a journey, one ticket is one ticket. The world contains more movement than one ticket. Hold the state. Do not worship the channel. A channel is useful when it carries what you desire. But water existed before the pipe. If one pipe is blocked, you do not conclude that water has ceased to exist. You seek another channel or allow one to appear. Think of states in this way. The state is the water. Circumstances are channels. Do not confuse them. The mind becomes desperate when it believes the channel is the source. Then it clings. If this person leaves, love leaves. If this job ends, security ends. If this opportunity disappears, success disappears. No, the channel may change. The state is deeper. This is why identity matters more than circumstance. The person who knows himself as supported can lose one channel and still remain inwardly available to another. The person who knows himself as valuable can hear one refusal without becoming worthless. The person who knows himself as loved can experience one difficult interaction without making rejection his essence. The person who knows himself as free can meet a temporary limitation without calling himself imprisoned. That is the state I want you to begin entering, not a state of indifference, a state of proportion. The obstacle returns to its proper size. One road, one door, one event, one person, one moment. You are larger than the moment. Your life is larger than the road. Your desired state is larger than the present channel. Let this become very simple tonight. Think of the thing that has seemed to close your future. Now make it smaller, not by pretending it is unimportant, by naming it exactly. Perhaps you have been saying, there is no way. Correct it. This way appears closed. Perhaps you have been saying, nobody wants me. Correct it. This person did not choose me. Perhaps, I cannot afford what I need. Correct it. At this moment, the present means, do not appear sufficient. Perhaps, love always leaves. Correct it. One relationship ended. Perhaps, nothing works for me. Correct it. This attempt did not work. Accuracy weakens the spell of finality. It returns the obstacle to one place instead of everywhere. Then ask, what is the larger state? Employment, home, love, security, freedom, recognition, peace. Choose the state. Feel how much more spacious it is than the obstacle. You may have lost one road, but you have not lost the destination. You may have lost one form, but you have not lost the state. You may have heard one no, but you have not heard from every possibility life contains. Let that be enough. No need to invent all the possibilities. You only need to stop declaring that none exist. That is the release. And as you move closer to sleep, notice how the mind becomes quieter when it no longer has to force one channel. You are not trying to make one person move. You are not trying to pry open one door. You are not staring at one roadblock. The world becomes larger again. There is space beyond what you currently see. You may not know what fills that space. Good. Leave it open. The unknown can contain roots. The unknown can contain conversations. The unknown can contain opportunity. The unknown can contain a turn you would never have chosen from the old state. You do not need to name any of it tonight. Just stop naming it impossible. One road is closed. The world is not. One door is closed. Possibility is not. One conversation went badly. Your whole future did not. One plan failed. Your life did not fail. One person decided something. They did not decide your being. Feel the difference. The obstacle has boundaries again. It is no longer infinite. And once it is no longer infinite, you do not need to spend the night fighting it. You can leave it where it is. You can rest in something larger. The state, the end, the life beyond that one channel. Perhaps tomorrow the same road is still closed. Let it be closed. You may discover another. Perhaps the same person still says no. Let that be their present answer. You do not need to turn it into your identity. Perhaps the same opportunity remains unavailable. Let it remain unavailable. The state is still larger. Do not ask tonight which new road appears. That question can wait. For now, it is enough to know that one road never had the right to become the whole world. Let the world become large again. Let possibility become wide again. Let the state become greater than the means. And if the mind reaches once more for an absolute conclusion, gently bring it back to scale. One event, one road, one door, one moment, not the whole world. Never the whole world. There is something I want you to see very clearly tonight, because once you see it, many forms of desperation begin to loosen their hold. You may desire one particular person, one particular position, one particular home, one particular sum of money, one particular journey, one particular answer. There is nothing wrong with knowing what you prefer. Desire often comes to us in a definite form, but beneath the form there is always a state, and the state is larger than the channel through which you presently imagine it must come. Ask yourself quietly, what is the state I actually seek? Not, what person do I want? Not, what employer must say yes? Not, what exact sum must arrive through this exact source? What is the state? Being loved, being chosen, being secure, being respected, being at home, being useful, being free, being welcomed, being wanted, being adequately supplied, being at peace, being established, being able to breathe without the old pressure. That is where I want you to look. The form may be precious to you. Do not deny that. But the state is deeper than the form. Suppose you desire affection from one particular person. Perhaps you love them. Perhaps you have imagined a future with them. Perhaps their silence or distance has become the obstacle that occupies your mind. Then, without realizing it, you may have made this person the owner of love itself. If they speak warmly, you feel loved. If they become distant, you feel unloved. If they write, hope returns. If they do not write, the whole state disappears. Do you see what power has been given away? You have taken a state of being and placed it in another person's pocket. Then every movement of their hand seems to determine whether you may possess it. I do not tell you that you must stop desiring harmony with that person. That would be another form of force. If your desire is sincere, let it be sincere. But stop saying inwardly, until this person behaves as I wish, I cannot be loved. That is not desire, that is bondage. The state of being loved must become larger than their present behavior. You may imagine harmony with them from the state of being loved. That is entirely different from imagining harmony in order to manufacture the state of being loved. In the first case, love is already yours. The relationship becomes an expression. In the second, the relationship is asked to become the source. And whenever you mistake an expression for the source, fear appears. You become watchful. You begin interpreting every word. You listen for changes in tone. You remember conversations. You rehearse future ones. You become an inward servant of the channel. Tonight, I ask you to return to the state. What would it feel like to be loved before anyone proves it? Not to pretend that everyone loves you, not to deny another person's freedom. Simply to feel that love belongs naturally in your life. What would change in your body? Would you still be listening so anxiously? Would you still be checking? Would you still feel that one silence could erase your worth? Perhaps not. Then let that state become larger. Let it contain the specific desire without being imprisoned by it. You may still hear that person's voice kindly in imagination. You may still feel harmony. But now you are not begging their image to save you from loneliness. You are meeting them from belonging. That is a different consciousness. The same principle applies to work. Suppose there is one employer you hope will choose you. Perhaps the position is exactly what you wanted. Perhaps you believe that if this one opportunity closes, something essential about your future closes with it. Then ask yourself, what state am I actually seeking through this position? Being useful, being recognized, being financially secure, using your abilities well, having meaningful work, having a place where your contribution matters. Now notice how much larger that is than one desk in one building. One employer may become the channel. Very well, let it. But the state existed before that employer appeared in your mind. Do not surrender the state to the employer. If they choose you, wonderful. If circumstances take another form, the state remains available. This does not weaken your desire. It strengthens your inner position. You can imagine yourself already established, already useful, already valued, and perhaps the very employer you desire becomes part of the fulfillment. But you are no longer standing before them saying inwardly, "You are the only door through which my worth may enter." No employer possesses your worth. No office owns usefulness. No title owns dignity. These things are states of consciousness before they are conditions printed upon paper. Let the state come first. Then the position may find its proper relationship to it. Suppose you require a certain sum of money. Perhaps the figure is very specific. You know the obligation. You know what is needed. Again, there is nothing wrong with a definite number. Practical life requires numbers. But what state are you truly seeking through the sum? Relief? Security? Freedom from pressure? The ability to meet obligations easily? The feeling that there is enough? The ability to make a choice without fear? That state is larger than one envelope, one check, one person, one business arrangement. Yet the frightened mind chooses a channel and says, "It must come from here." Perhaps you expect a certain person to help. Perhaps you expect a sale. Perhaps you expect one payment. Then every day you watch that source. If it moves, you are hopeful. If it does not, you feel trapped. You are no longer inhabiting supply. You are monitoring a pipe. Do not worship the pipe. The state is the water. The particular means is only one way through which water may presently be imagined to flow. You do not need to destroy the pipe. You do not need to reject the means you know. Use it if it is natural and available. But do not tell yourself that because one pipe appears blocked, the whole source has vanished. Feel the state of being supplied. Feel what it would be like if the matter were already handled. Let that become the central thing. Perhaps you still receive the exact sum through the exact way you hoped. Perhaps the arrangement is different. The fulfilled state does not become smaller because the bridge surprised you. You wanted relief. Let relief be yours inwardly. You wanted sufficiency. Let sufficiency become familiar. You wanted freedom from the constant calculation. Begin by letting the calculation stop for this night. Then the channel can return to its proper size. One means, not the source of your being. Consider also the desire for a home. A certain house may appeal to you deeply. Perhaps you can see yourself in its rooms. Perhaps the neighborhood pleases you. Perhaps something in you says, that is where I belong. Fine. Desire it, but ask what state stands beneath the address. Home, belonging, privacy, rest, security, beauty. A place where you can close the door and feel that life has room for you. That state is larger than brick, wood, street, number, agent, owner, agreement. Again, this does not mean you must throw away the particular house because the state is larger. You may imagine yourself there, but do so from the feeling of being at home. Do not make the building itself a tyrant. Do not say, if this house is not mine, then I cannot be at home anywhere. That sentence turns preference into imprisonment. Instead, say inwardly, I know the state, I know what home feels like. Then perhaps the very house becomes yours. Or perhaps life reveals another place that contains what you truly sought more fully than the first. You do not need to decide tonight. You only need to remain larger than the channel. This principle protects you from desperation because desperation always shrinks the world. It says, only this person, only this job, only this road, only this answer, only this amount from this source, only this date. And the narrower the corridor becomes, the more frightened you feel. You believe you are becoming more focused, but perhaps you are becoming more dependent. There is a difference between clarity and contraction. Clarity says, this is what I desire. Contraction says, and if it does not come exactly through this route, I cannot be fulfilled. Clarity is peaceful. Contraction is afraid. Tonight, preserve clarity and release contraction. You can be specific without becoming imprisoned by specificity. You can love someone without making them your only access to love. You can desire a position without making one employer the keeper of your future. You can want a certain home without making one address the boundary of belonging. You can require money without making one person the source of supply. You can desire a journey without making one sailing the whole ocean. The state is larger. Say that inwardly if it helps. The state is larger. Larger than this one road. Larger than this one person. Larger than this one moment. Larger than the evidence I can presently see. Feel the space in that. You do not need to fill the space. Just allow it. The frightened mind may immediately ask, then should I give up the specific thing? No. You are still thinking in extremes. Either I must cling to the channel or abandon it. There is another way. Desire it lightly. Assume the state deeply. That is a very different order. Let the person be beloved, but let love be yours. Let the job be desirable, but let usefulness be yours. Let the money be needed, but let supply be yours. Let the home be preferred, but let belonging be yours. Let the road be chosen, but let freedom be yours. Then you are no longer trying to squeeze the whole state through one narrow opening. You have become the state, and the form can find its natural place. Perhaps this is what people misunderstand about letting go. They imagine that letting go means ceasing to care. They say, if I release the means, I must no longer want the thing. No, you are not releasing desire. You are releasing the frightened insistence that your present understanding of the bridge is the only bridge possible. You may still love the end. You may still enjoy the imaginal scene. You may still feel the specific person beside you, the key in your hand, the work under your fingers, the journey completed. But now there is space around the scene. It is not suffocating. You do not rise from imagination and immediately run to the channel demanding proof. You rest in the state. This is especially important in matters of affection. A person may say, I want him, or I want her. Very well. But ask what inner sentence lies underneath. Sometimes it is not simply love. Sometimes it is, if this person chooses me, then I will finally know I am worthy. Now the desire carries a burden no human being should be asked to carry for you. You have asked them to create your worth. Release them from that office. Let worth become yours. Then if you imagine them choosing you, the scene becomes joyful rather than desperate. You are not saying, make me worthy. You are experiencing harmony from worth. That is cleaner. That is freer. The same with recognition. Perhaps there is one person whose approval you have desired for years. A father, a mother, a superior, a respected colleague. Someone whose opinion became enormous in your inner world. You imagine them finally saying, you have done well. And perhaps you sincerely desire to hear it. But beneath that, what is the state? Being respected, being seen, knowing that your work has value. Let that become yours first. Then their praise may be part of the expression, but it no longer creates the identity. You do not hand your whole being to another person and ask them to sign it. You are consciousness. You select the state. This is what I mean when I say the state is larger than the channel. The channel can be precious. It can be loved. It can be preferred. It can even be exactly what appears, but it must not be promoted above the state itself. For if the channel becomes greater, you begin worshipping conditions. You say, I cannot be happy until this happens. Then happiness becomes hostage. I cannot feel chosen until they choose me. Then chosenness becomes hostage. I cannot feel secure until this exact amount appears. Then security becomes hostage. I cannot rest until I know the route. Then rest becomes hostage. How many inner states have you placed in captivity like this? Tonight, release them. Not the desires, the states. Let them come home to consciousness. You may say, I am allowed to feel loved before the letter comes. I am allowed to feel useful before the employer decides. I am allowed to feel at home before the key is visible. I am allowed to feel supplied before I know the source. I am allowed to feel free before the road explains itself. This is not pretending. It is assumption. You are choosing the state first. And once the state is chosen, you may be surprised by how differently you relate to the specific desire. You may still want it deeply, but there is less terror around it, less compulsion, less checking, less need to manipulate. You no longer press against the channel. You allow. This psychological spaciousness is important because imagination works more naturally when it is not being used as an emergency instrument. If every imaginal act is performed with the feeling, this must work or I am finished, what state are you actually inhabiting? You are inhabiting danger. You are saying, everything depends upon this. Then even while imagining fulfillment, desperation remains underneath. So remove the desperation by enlarging the state. You are not finished if one road closes. You are not unloved because one person is silent. You are not useless because one employer refuses. You are not without a home because one address disappears. You are not without supply because one expected source does not move. The state is larger. Let the state become the ground beneath you. Then the specific outcome can rest upon that ground without carrying the entire weight of your being. Perhaps you can think of it like a great room with many doors. The state is the room. You are inside it. You may prefer one door through which circumstances enter. But if that door appears closed for a moment, you are still inside the room. You have not lost the state. There may be another entrance. There may be a window. There may be a passage you have not noticed. You do not have to inspect them tonight. The important thing is that you are not standing outside the room begging one door to admit you. You are already within, being loved, being secure, being useful, being welcomed, being free, being at home. Choose the room, then let the doors take care of themselves. This is why I continually bring you back to identity. Circumstances are movements. Identity is where you stand while movements occur. If your identity is the one who is loved, one person's present silence becomes a circumstance. If your identity is the one who is unloved, the same silence becomes proof. If your identity is the one who is supported, one financial difficulty becomes a condition to meet. If your identity is the one for whom there is never enough, the difficulty becomes confirmation. The outer event may be similar. The state changes the meaning. So tonight, do not ask merely, what do I want? Ask, who am I when the state I want is natural? If you want love, who are you when love is natural? You are not watching the door. You are not rehearsing abandonment. You are not measuring affection. You are at ease enough to receive. If you want security, who are you when security is natural? You are not calculating disaster before it arrives. You are not turning each expense into prophecy. You deal with what belongs to the day and then you rest. If you want recognition, who are you when recognition is natural? You do not beg every face to approve you. You know the value of what you bring. If you want belonging, who are you when belonging is natural? You do not enter every room asking inwardly whether you are permitted to be there. You arrive. You sit. You belong. These are states, and tonight, states are available before channels agree. This is the freedom imagination gives you. You can occupy the room before the door appears open in the world of sense. You do not need to wait psychologically outside. Let the body feel that. Perhaps you have been tense because you thought everything depended upon one thing. One answer, one person, one opportunity, one sum, one decision. What if everything does not depend upon one thing? What if the state is larger? What if life contains more entrances than you presently see? You do not need to know what they are. Just let the world become wider again. There is room. There is room beyond one person's present opinion. There is room beyond one employer's decision. There is room beyond one financial route. There is room beyond one address. There is room beyond one failed plan. There is room beyond one imagined bridge, and in that room, you may rest. The specific desire can remain. You do not have to push it away. Place it gently within the larger state. Perhaps you still see the face you love. Fine. See it from love. Perhaps you still see the office you desire. See it from usefulness and belonging. Perhaps you still imagine the exact home. Imagine it from the natural feeling of being at home. Perhaps you still know the exact sum. Feel it from sufficiency, not from panic. Let the state hold the desire instead of asking the desire to hold the state. That is the reversal, and it changes everything. The state becomes the vessel. The form becomes what the vessel contains. You no longer say, if this form appears, then I may become. You say inwardly, I have become. Let the form correspond, not as a command shouted at life, as a quiet arrangement of consciousness. The night is a good place to practice this because no immediate decision is required. You do not have to choose another person. You do not have to seek another job. You do not have to abandon the house you desire. You do not have to change any practical plan. Tonight is not about outward replacement. It is about inward proportion. Make the state larger. That is all. If the mind returns to the channel, notice. This person must. No. Love is larger. This employer must. No. Usefulness is larger. This money must come through. No. Supply is larger. This exact road must. No. Freedom is larger. This particular answer must. No. Fulfillment is larger. Then return to the state, not as a slogan, as a place. What does love feel like when no one must prove it tonight? What does security feel like when no sum must appear before sleep? What does belonging feel like when no address must be confirmed tonight? What does being chosen feel like when no committee is presently sitting in judgment? Perhaps the answer is simply less tension. Let less tension be enough. You are not trying to manufacture ecstasy. You are creating space around the desire. And space allows rest. You may discover that this spaciousness is itself one of the first signs that the state is becoming natural. You are no longer holding the channel with both hands. You can breathe. You can let tomorrow be tomorrow. You can let another person be another person. You can let life contain routes you have not planned. You still know what you desire, but you no longer believe your whole being is waiting outside one door. You are already inside the state. Let that become your place tonight. Inside love, inside security, inside belonging, inside usefulness, inside freedom, inside welcome, inside the quiet knowledge that the state you seek is larger than any one expression of it. Then let the channel become smaller, not unimportant, simply smaller than you once made it. One person, one opportunity, one road, one means, one form, and beyond all of them, the state remains, larger, wider, more spacious, yours to enter inwardly now. Rest there. Let the specific desire rest there with you. No need to throw it away. No need to clutch it. Let it be held by something greater. And if sleep begins to come, allow yourself to fall asleep, not as the one waiting for one channel to save you, but as the one who already belongs to the state from which many forms of fulfillment can naturally appear. You do not have to move the obstacle tonight. You have already gone beyond it within. Let that be enough. There is no need now to return to the wall and inspect it once more. No need to measure its height. No need to ask whether it has become thinner. No need to search for some crack through which the light might enter. You are no longer standing before it. You are resting beyond it. And because you are beyond it inwardly, you do not need to know what happens first. You do not need to know who changes their mind. You do not need to know who remembers your name. You do not need to know which letter is written. You do not need to know which conversation occurs. You do not need to know which road opens. You do not need to know which road quietly closes, because it is no longer needed. The bridge is not your responsibility tonight. Let the bridge remain unseen. You have spent enough time trying to discover how the impossible could become possible. Let that question become tired now. Let it become so tired that it no longer needs an answer. How? You do not need to know. When? You do not need to know. Through whom? You do not need to know. What must change? You do not need to decide. Who must move first? You do not need to arrange them. The end has already been accepted. Let the middle remain free. There may be movements taking place that would mean nothing to you if you could see them tonight. Someone may have an ordinary thought tomorrow morning. Someone may decide to write a letter. A conversation may turn in an unexpected direction. A plan may change. A person may take another street. An appointment may be delayed. Something that appeared unavailable may become available. Or fulfillment may come through a form so different from the one you expected that you would not recognize the first step, even if it stood before you now. Leave all of that alone. The seed does not ask the earth to explain how it will become a tree. It carries the pattern quietly. Then darkness covers it. And while nothing visible seems to happen, movement begins where the eye cannot follow. Let your assumption be like that, covered now, quiet, no longer dug up for inspection, no longer exposed to every question, no longer required to prove itself before morning. You have placed it where it belongs. Now let the night cover it. There is nothing else you need to add. If you have imagined the end imperfectly, let it be imperfect. If you did not see clearly, let that be all right. If the scene wandered, let it wander. If your feeling was faint, do not try to make it stronger now. You are not being examined. There is no judge beside the bed measuring the quality of your assumption. There is no score to keep. There is no spiritual prize for remaining awake longer. You may forget every word I have said. You may forget the scene. You may forget what you were trying to imagine. The deeper direction can remain even when the words disappear. A compass does not need to repeat the name of north. It points. You have pointed within. Let the mind rest from naming the direction. Perhaps the old problem returns for a moment. Let it pass like a traveler on a road you no longer use. You do not need to invite it inside. You do not need to fight it. There it is, an old picture, an old question, an old fear. Let it continue. You are not required to follow every thought that passes through consciousness. A thought may knock without being given a room. Tonight, let the old obstacle knock and receive no argument, no debate, no explanation. You are resting beyond it. That is all. Perhaps the mind says, but the facts remain. Let them remain until they change. You are not responsible for forcing tonight's facts into tomorrow's form. What looked final does not need to remain final. What looked fixed does not need to remain fixed. What looked unavailable does not need to define what becomes available. What looked closed does not need to contain every road. One closed road was never the whole world. One closed door was never every entrance. One refusal was never every answer. One silence was never the whole future. One missing means was never the limit of all provision. One person's decision was never the final authority over your being. Let all of that become distant now. You do not need to repeat it. You have understood enough. The night asks for less understanding now, less thought, less effort, less movement. Perhaps only this remains. You have crossed within. The rest may follow. There is nothing strange about allowing yourself to sleep before evidence arrives. You have slept before many things. You have slept before letters came. You have slept before journeys began. You have slept before important meetings. You have slept before decisions were made. You have slept while people elsewhere continued living their lives. The world did not require your wakefulness in order to move. It does not require it tonight. You may sleep while the answer remains unseen. You may sleep while the bridge remains unfinished to your conscious mind. You may sleep while tomorrow has not yet revealed its events. You are not keeping life alive through worry. You may release that responsibility. What must move may move. What must change may change. What must open may open. What must fall away may fall away. And if something does not belong to the state you have accepted, you do not need to decide tonight how it leaves. Let it lose its place naturally. Perhaps an old habit becomes less convincing. Perhaps a fear that once controlled you begins to sound repetitive. Perhaps a conversation you used to rehearse stops attracting you. Perhaps a person you believed held all the power no longer appears so enormous in your mind. Perhaps an opportunity you thought was the only one begins to look like one road among many. These shifts need no ceremony. A thing may leave consciousness quietly. Let it, and what belongs to the new state may enter just as quietly. A thought, an impulse, a meeting, a small decision, a feeling of readiness, a surprising lack of fear. You may find yourself doing something naturally that yesterday you would have overthought for hours. You may speak one sentence differently. You may refuse to participate in an old argument. You may notice a possibility that had been invisible only because fear kept your attention elsewhere. Do not demand that any of these things announce themselves as the bridge. Let life remain ordinary. The bridge may look ordinary. The way may be composed of events too simple to excite you while they happen. That is all right. You do not need excitement. You need not interfere. The destination is enough. Sleep as though you already received the good news. What would your body do after the good news? Perhaps nothing remarkable. Perhaps the shoulders would finally stop carrying the next day. Let them stop. Perhaps the forehead would no longer be trying to solve. Let it soften. Perhaps the jaw would not need to prepare another argument. Let it become quiet. Perhaps the hands would not need to hold so tightly. Let them rest where they are. Perhaps the breath would not be measured. Let it come. Let it leave. You do not have to breathe as though you are doing an exercise. You already know how to breathe. Life has been doing that through you all day, without asking your permission. Let life continue. You are no longer required to perform the state. The state may carry you. Sleep as though the door is behind you, not opening. Behind you. Feel the difference. You are not standing with your hand upon the handle, wondering whether it will turn. You are somewhere else now. The room beyond the door has become ordinary. Perhaps you have already placed your coat somewhere. Perhaps you have already sat down. Perhaps the door itself is forgotten. That is where I want you. Beyond the drama of opening. Beyond the moment of getting. Beyond the first relief. Inside the ordinary life afterward. Sleep as though the journey has already ended. No station remains ahead. No ticket needs to be found. No timetable needs to be consulted. No luggage needs to be carried another mile. You have arrived inwardly. Let the traveler rest. You have been carrying the luggage of uncertainty for too long. Put it down. You do not need to unpack every piece. Just stop carrying it. The road has done enough for one night. The traveler has done enough. Rest now on the other side of the obstacle. If the obstacle was work, sleep after the work has been found. If the obstacle was money, sleep after the pressure has gone. If the obstacle was love, sleep after belonging has become natural. If the obstacle was a home, sleep after the key has become familiar. If the obstacle was a journey, sleep after arrival. If the obstacle was another person's decision, sleep after that decision has lost the power to define you. If the obstacle was something you could not even name, sleep after the heaviness has lifted. You do not need to choose the correct image now. The feeling of afterward is enough. After. There is a softness in that word. After the argument, after the waiting, after the question, after the fear, after the obstacle. Let yourself live there for the few remaining moments before sleep takes the rest. Perhaps all you need is the quiet thought. That is behind me. Then nothing. That is behind me. No story, no explanation. Behind me. And if the mind asks, how did it get behind me? You do not need to answer. The question has arrived too late. You are already after. Let it go. There is no more work to be done upon the obstacle. Do not improve it. Do not weaken it. Do not imagine it smaller. You have gone beyond it. The wall may remain standing in yesterday's picture. You are not in front of it. The closed road may remain closed in the old map. You are no longer depending upon that road. The silence may remain in the old conversation. You are no longer waiting inside that silence. The number may remain on the old page. You are no longer giving the page authority over your state. The world can keep its old evidence for a little while. You do not need it now. You are falling asleep from another place, and from another place, the same evidence may begin to mean less. This is enough. You do not need to become completely fearless tonight. You do not need complete certainty. Perhaps a little uncertainty remains. Let it remain at the edge. You do not need to remove every cloud in order to know that the sky is larger. Let the doubt become small. It can sit far away. You need not approach it. You are not trying to create perfect belief. Perfection itself can become another obstacle. You say, did I believe strongly enough? No more of that tonight. Was my scene vivid enough? No more. Did I feel the end correctly? No more. Have I repeated it enough? No more. You are allowed to stop. There is a point when continuing becomes another form of doubt. The fulfilled person eventually stops practicing fulfillment and simply rests. Rest now. You have done enough. The obstacle has had enough of your attention. The road has had enough planning. The future has had enough interrogation. Let it all become quiet. The bridge may remain out of sight. That is no longer a problem. You do not need to see the bridge to know where you have gone inwardly. A bridge may be crossed in darkness. A road may turn beyond the reach of the lamp. The fact that you cannot see the next mile does not mean the road ends where your sight ends. Let sight end. Let knowledge end where it ends. Let control end. You do not need to carry consciousness beyond its natural place tonight. Sleep can take you now, and while sleep comes, perhaps the voice itself becomes less important. You may hear only fragments. That is fine. You may hear a sentence and lose the next one. Fine. You may stop following the meaning. Fine. You do not need to remain with me. Go. Go into the state. Go into sleep. The words are only accompanying you to the edge. They do not need to cross with you. You may leave them here. The end remains. The words may dissolve. The state may remain without language. Perhaps there is only relief now. Perhaps not even relief. Perhaps just less resistance. That is enough. Less resistance. Less watching. Less effort. Less need to know. Let less become enough. You have been adding so much to the night. Questions, plans, predictions, memories, arguments. Remove them. No more questions tonight. No more solving. No more watching. No more measuring. No more checking whether something has changed. No more checking whether you have changed. No more checking whether you are asleep yet. Let sleep come in its own way. The body knows. It has done this many times. You do not need to manage the exact moment consciousness fades. Let it fade. Perhaps the room itself begins to feel farther away. Let it. Perhaps your sense of time becomes uncertain. Let it. Perhaps thought becomes less organized. Good. There is nothing left that needs to be organized. The future does not need to be organized by you tonight. Let the road remain unseen. Let the bridge remain unnamed. Let tomorrow keep its secrets. You are not losing anything by not knowing them. You have already chosen the end. Let tomorrow discover how to approach you from that state. The matter can remain out of your hands tonight. Out of your hands. Feel the relief of that. You are not throwing away responsibility for your life. You are putting down responsibility for what cannot be done in this moment. There is wisdom in that. If tomorrow asks for action, act. If tomorrow asks for patience, be patient. If tomorrow places a clear opportunity before you, meet it. But tonight asks for sleep. Answer tonight. Sleep. Let tomorrow remain tomorrow. The answer may come through a way you never considered, or it may come through a very ordinary way that seems obvious only after it has happened. You do not need to choose between these possibilities. Do not decide what kind of surprise life must give you. Do not demand drama. Fulfillment can be simple. A door opens, someone says yes, someone remembers, a letter arrives, an idea occurs, a position appears, a burden is met, a conversation becomes easier. Something that once seemed enormous becomes strangely ordinary. That is enough. Let ordinary fulfillment be enough. You do not need a miracle that announces itself as a miracle. You need the state, and the state may come clothed in ordinary events. Sleep through the invisible part. Let the visible part come when it comes. You are no longer the one standing before the impossible asking for evidence. You are the one beyond it. Stay there without effort. You have crossed within. The rest may follow. What looked final does not need to remain final. Let that thought soften now. What looked final does not need to remain final. The road that appeared closed was one road. The answer that appeared decisive was one moment. The wall that seemed permanent belonged to one state. You are larger than the state you are leaving. You do not need to say this aloud. You do not need to repeat it. Let it be understood and then forgotten. Sleep as though you already know something the old state could not know. Not the method, not the date, not the person, only the end. Done. Behind you, settled. The whole matter no longer standing in front of you. Perhaps you can feel how different the word impossible becomes from here. When you stood before the obstacle, impossible sounded like a sentence. From beyond it, impossible sounds like something you once believed. Perhaps one day you will remember this night and think how absolute the difficulty seemed. Perhaps you will remember the very thing you feared and wonder why you gave it so much authority. You do not need to reach that day consciously now. Just borrow its peace. Let your future memory lend you rest. I once thought there was no way. Once. Past tense. I once thought the door was closed. Once. I once thought this could not change. Once. Then let even those words disappear. No need to remember the obstacle at all. The fulfilled life does not spend every hour looking backward at what failed to stop it. It continues. So continue inwardly, beyond, further than the obstacle, further than the relief, into ordinary peace. This is where sleep can meet you, not at the wall, not at the locked door, not beside the unanswered letter, not over the figures upon the table, not inside the old conversation. Let sleep meet you after all of that. After you have crossed within. You do not need to cross again. You do not need to hold the door open. You do not need to keep walking. Rest. What must move may move. What must change may change. What must open may open. What must be released may release. What belongs to the old arrangement may lose its place. What belongs to the new state may find its proper place. You do not need to watch. You do not need to check. You do not need to remain awake. Sleep as though the good news already came. Sleep as though the answer has already been read. Sleep as though the journey is already remembered. Sleep as though the wall is somewhere behind you now, far enough behind you that you no longer need to turn around. No more questions tonight. No more solving. No more watching. Let the road remain unseen. Let the body rest. Let the mind become quiet. What seemed impossible can remain outside the night. You do not need to bring it any farther. You are already beyond it. Let the breath come. Let the breath go. No effort. No demand. The obstacle can wait outside. The old answer can wait outside. The whole visible problem can wait until another hour. You are somewhere else, beyond, quiet, safe enough to release the thought. The bridge is not your responsibility tonight. You have crossed within. The rest may follow. No more questions, no more solving, no more watching, nothing to prove, nothing to force, nothing to inspect. Let the road remain unseen. Let the night remain quiet. Let the mind become softer. Let the old state lose its voice. You are no longer standing before the wall. You are resting beyond it, already beyond. Sleep now, and let life reveal the way.